Hello there, I'm Tendencies and welcome to the ultimate compendium of the Western release of Lost Ark. As this is not a game I've ever covered in the past, in this video I will do my best at trying to showcase and guide you through the entirety of this upcoming MMO game in this one single video, hoping it will serve you well in your future adventures, so feel free to bookmark it or save it for later. And that is of course assuming you might be checking it out. Also, if you're new to my channel, I'll try to make a good first impression, but I will allow myself to sometimes make World of Warcraft system comparisons in order to potentially make it easier for some of you to understand certain terms. Lost Ark is an upcoming free-to-play MMO game hailing from Korea and developed by Smilegate, where it was released in late 2018 as an open beta, originally announced in 2014, and yes, you heard that one correctly, but up until now was only available to 3 countries, notably Russia, Japan and Korea. 7 years later, in 2021, Amazon Games struck a deal with Smilegate and thus will be bringing it over with localization to Europe and North America as its publisher. Currently expected to release on the 11th of February 2022, there is a 3-day early access possibility through the purchase of any Founders Pack, making that the 8th. You can find out more about the Founders Packs in a later section of the video. This game offers quite a unique approach to the MMO genre, as it has an isometric view, which will more often than not lead to quick comparisons to games such as Diablo or Path of Exile. However, it does not follow the MMO industry standard of the Holy Trinity, known as the Tank, Healer and DPS. This means that all 15 classes available at launch can be considered DPS classes, with the exception of 2 being the Paladin and the Bard, which are widely perceived as support classes. While they can also deal damage, you will never match the DPS capabilities of other classes in group content, so it would be wise for you to pick a different class if you just want to do damage. The main message to take away from this is that while it's not impossible to play as a DPS Bard or Paladin in Lost Ark, it might be frowned upon by players in the community, which will make it harder for you to do group content, as other players might simply not want to group up with you. Keep in mind that I say that to you as a World of Warcraft Retribution Paladin, and memes aside about their DPS, the best comparison of a Lost Ark Paladin would be of a WoW Classic or Vanilla Paladin, as everybody wants to play with you, but nobody really wants you to do damage. While the vast majority of the content of Lost Ark can be completed solo, even as a support class, this is after all an MMO, so it offers a wide variety of group and party content in what is usually a party of 4 players, with the standard group being 3 different DPS classes and 1 support. While you can definitely clear easier content in non-standard group comps, the farther you'll go into the endgame, the more difficult it will get, resulting in, for example, your inability to meet DPS checks in certain encounters if you decide to play in a party with 2 supports. Having said that, if you were to just look at the duration of this video, this game is absolutely massive in terms of content and systems it has to offer, which actually always feel fair to the player, as your progress does not get invalidated at any point while having many RNG failsafe systems in place. At first, the sheer amount of information in the game UI was intimidating and had me asking 100 questions an hour. This in turn led to the creation of this video, which started by constantly having my friends and I search for information about it, even though the game itself will guide you through its systems and interactions at a relatively steady pace. It is a result of many years of content and development and should be compared as if WoW's expansions never invalidated previous expansions, which would indeed make it quite daunting for the new player. There's so much more to come in the coming months and years for Lost Ark in terms of content and activity, and that is honestly just a refreshing thing to hear for an MMO game in 2022. Now for a little disclaimer. Everything you'll find in this compendium has been researched mostly through the closed beta, as well as many different credible sources, from wiki pages to content creators, as well as the Korean and Russian client of the game. Having said that, it is important to note that the Western release client will differ a bit from the closed beta client, and most definitely will have different content available at launch from the Russian or Korean versions of the game. Keep that in mind, as if you decide to search for information on your own outside of this video, you might find information that might be incorrect, as there is a vast amount of out-of-date or misleading information out there, as well as things that will not work the same way in our Western release client. The best description I can give you about our client's version is this abomination of a World of Warcraft rendition. Imagine that you'll be playing Cataclysm at launch, but with a Shadowlands class balance patch, with Mist of Pandaria's Monk class, but without Death Knights and Demon Hunters. In short, you can expect quite up-to-date quality of life changes from the Korean client, but with both endgame content and some classes missing at launch, as they'll come at a later date. Lastly, this video is not sponsored and its creation can be credited to a vast majority of my friends' interest in the topic. When you first get into Lost Ark, you'll notice a big Season 2 under its name. That is because when Lost Ark first launched in Korea in late 2018, it wasn't exactly a success. Following in Final Fantasy XIV's footsteps, They've spent the next 18 months or so on reworking a lot of features in the game, which led to a big change in the community perception, as it went from the Smilegate devs being pretty badly perceived to absolutely praised, and have since then kept their status of being loved by the player base. With the introduction of the Nostalgia update in Korea, also known as Tier 3 in the summer of 2021, Lost Ark has since become the second most popular game in Korea, just behind League of Legends, with an increase in player retention of about 250% and 2060k concurrent users as of January 2022. Those Korean numbers alone would put the game in Steam chart's top 5 games, which definitely feels like a massive success. The best part is yet to come, as during their Lost Ark online presentation in December 2021, which is their version of a mini BlizzCon, they've shown that there are so many things that are yet to come in the coming years, but we'll get back to that topic near the end of this video. As I've just mentioned this subject, Lost Ark's endgame PvE content is divided into tiers from 1 to 3. What is important to know is that the Western release of the game will launch with very early Tier 3 content available alongside various modifications that are yet to be confirmed. However, Smilegate have went on record that they plan on releasing Tier 2 and 3 for the West as soon as possible, most likely due to their data proving how big of a success the game became once the Tier 3 update went live. Tiers in Lost Ark usually offer additional endgame content in a fashion similar to a WoW expansion, as it is not just about a single raid tier but a big increase to item level progress, new types of items and sets, new Abyssal Dungeons, garden raid content, events and so on. However, it doesn't invalidate its previous content as much as WoW does, as Lost Ark's endgame content is generally gated behind your character's item level. This means that while your gear progression is more or less reset in between tiers, many catch-up systems for alts exist and even more will be added in the future, as the idea is that in order to reach Tier 3 content, which requires an item level of 1100, you will first need to experience Tier 1 and Tier 2 content in some form or another, which should in theory allow for all content to be experienced at all times as long as the player base is there to support it.
First there was the Ark, and from it a new world was born, Arkesia. To safeguard its future, the Ark was split into 7 pieces and scattered across Arkesia. Drawn by the light, armies of demons opened a rift between worlds, and thus began the Great Chain Wars. Only uniting the 7 Arks could end the war and restore peace to Arkesia. But after 500 years, Lord Kazaros and his army of demons threatened to invade Arkesia once more. Our only hope to defeat them is for a new generation of heroes to reassemble the Ark, discover its secrets, and use its power to drive the darkness out once and for all. With the gods long gone, it is now only the Lazenith Beatrice who watches over Arkesia and awaits a worthy hero. Your quest will take you far and wide, but your journey begins here in Rethramis.
Once you start the game, the first thing you'll notice is that in Lost Ark, classes are essentially divided into subclasses and are gender locked. Although Smilegate said that it will be updating classes to be available outside of their one locked choice, it will be an ongoing process which will happen over the years to come. Some of them already have a counterpart available, such as the Deadeye and the Gunslinger, but it still goes beyond being just a female or male version of a class. To put things into perspective, out of her 18 skills, 6 of them are different from the Deadeye, as well as both of her awakening skills, her class Engravings, as well as her specialization stat. Don't worry about those terms just yet, as we'll dive into those later in the video. While I will not be covering classes extensively in this video, I'll still give you a very brief rundown of each class and what to expect from it. Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see a better detailed class video. In the Western release of Lost Ark, there will be a total of 15 subclasses available at launch, notably 13 DPS and 2 supports. As a side note, as of January 2022, the Korean client has 22 classes. Once you have chosen your class, you will arrive in Trixion, a kind of training zone that will allow you to play around with subclasses to get a good first look at them before making a final decision. Once you have decided, you will be actually starting at level 10 instead of level 1, which is a result of a streamlined prologue system that came along with the reworked Season 2 of Lost Ark. This prologue can be skipped and isn't necessary to complete, but is always worth doing once if it's your very first experience with the game. The Berserker is your slow-moving, heavy-hitting melee warrior archetype. He wields a huge great sword, its identity gouge allows him to go berserk, which greatly increases his movement and attack speed, and while he's considered to be easy to play, he's reliant on his high cooldowns and long animations, which can become tricky in faster paced encounters. The Gun Lancer, while neither a real tank nor a support class, has access to a taunt ability which can help with many boss encounters. While it is considered the slowest class in the game with a unique spacebar dash which is actually a jump backwards, it is extremely durable and can still dish out very competitive DPS. It has access to a wide variety of tools that makes it usually a very light class in party play. The Paladin follows the Holy Knight archetype and is one of the 2 available support classes in the Western launch. As explained in the subsection number 2 of the video, even though support classes can and will deal damage alongside other classes, you are not expected to be competitive in it, and trying pure DPS support builds might more often than not lead to your own disappointment, as most groups will prefer not to play with you, so sorry fellow Red Paladins. He is considered a more offensive support as he is worse than Bard at keeping a team alive but better at providing damage buffs. He is also potentially easier as his buffs and abilities doesn't require very proper party positioning. The War Dancer is an agile martial artist class that builds up key orbs by punching and hitting enemies with skills. Those orbs are then spent to cast stronger skills. While she can maneuver in and out of combat quickly, she is a burst-oriented class as she usually deals most of her damage inside a 6-second self-buff window, requiring you to auto-attack in between and using smaller filler skills. While her hits can be both powerful and satisfying, it can often lead to a combat pace which can at times feel pretty slow or having nothing to press. The Striker is the male version of the War Dancer, also known as the Bruce Lee class. They share 12 skills and 6 that are different, as well as different awakening skills, engravings, and different specialty scaling. Since he relies more on the consumption of key orbs for his attacks, he tends to be a bit slower in its combat pace in comparison, but as a result delivers satisfying huge hits when they land. The Scrapper is a heavy-hitting punch mana-less class that balances her attacks between the yellow key and green shock resources. One type of skill expends one resource while generating the other, leading to an alternating usage of types of skills. In terms of its feeling, she's considered to be a tankier version of the War Dancer with alternating playstyles between slow and heavy-hitting attacks or more agile and consistent DPS builds. The Soulfist is a close mid-range fighter that is known as the Dragon Ball Goku class. She utilizes stages of power to deal devastating damage when fully empowered, but is weak when she isn't. If you're into big satisfying spirit bombs, the strongest single hit attack in the game, this one is for you. The Sorceress is the classic mage experience and a master of elements that mostly excels at dealing long-range direct damage. She usually offers 2 different playstyles in terms of endgame build and can deal damage in either more burst or more sustained fashion, depending on what you prefer. Regardless of what you choose, it's hard to compete with this class's spell visuals. The Bard is the second support class alongside the Paladin, which is considered to be a bit more defensive oriented as well as actually pretty tanky. Utilizing her toolkit is considered a bit harder than the Paladin as it requires both you and your group to stay in proper positions for spells and buffs to have effect, meaning that you'll want to plan out the usage of your abilities at the right time depending on the encounters you'll be doing as well as the group you'll be playing with. Keep in mind that playing a support class is perfectly fine for solo content. Sometimes it's actually even better as thanks to access to some healing spells, you might save some gold that would otherwise be spent on healing potions. The Deadeye is a quite complex gunner style class that cycles between pistols, shotguns and sniper rifle stances for a total of 16 active abilities as opposed to the standard of 8. However, with shotguns being a primary damage source, this class is not to be mistaken as a range class despite using guns, as it usually spends a lot of time close to its enemies in order to be effective. It is however possible to play with pistols only, cutting out stance swapping completely in endgame PvE builds, which is quite simpler to manage. Just like with the Striker and War Dancer, the Gunslinger is the female version of the Deadeye, which in turn makes her share 12 skills but differ in endgame builds and customization. While the Deadeye can have a very powerful shotgun or pistol build, the Gunslinger offers a stronger sniper stance as well as the possibility of a pistol and sniper build only. As long as gender is not an issue for you, she is usually preferred by players as she can be more flexible in its gameplay as well as a bit easier whilst at the same time not underperforming. The Artillerist is a tanky but pretty slow artillery based class that deals high damage through often delayed detonations as well as rocket launchers and heavy machine guns, making it not really a beginner friendly class. When played properly, the Artillerist can deal incredible damage and is a nightmare to deal with in PvP thanks to his delayed combos and zoning abilities, as his identity skill allows him to enter into siege mode and melt people with a scary laser beam. Since a lot of his abilities have some form of wind-up animations or delayed explosion, the playstyle might not be for everyone, as bashing your buttons left and right won't usually be a viable strategy of gameplay. The Sharpshooter is a ranged bowman class similar to WoW's Hunter, as aside from hitting from afar, his identity skill allows you to summon a Silver Hawk to assist you in battle. While not particularly complex in its gameplay, being an agile archer that dodges out of trouble through various means and then winds up big trick shots in safe positions will surely appeal to those that enjoy that class fantasy. The Deathblade is one that can be identified as the Assassin Rogue class. With powerful in and out combos of knockups and deadly blade cuts, a vast majority of its skills benefit from increased damage modifiers when hitting targets behind their back, also known as back attack skills, at least more so than other classes. This will result in a gameplay that will have you fishing for good positioning before doing your combos onto enemies in order to remain effective, as you'll be trying to create short but effective burst windows. While that is a playstyle that makes it not a very popular PvE class, the class is insanely good in PvP due to having an arsenal of anti-CC abilities as well as stun locks or knockoff combos. The Shadow Hunter is a mid-range style assassin that offers quite a unique playstyle, a tiny bit similar to the WoW Demon Hunter, as you'll be using a variety of glaive throws and weapon hits alongside some dark demonic abilities, ultimately allowing you to transform into demon form as your identity skill, which will then grant you 6 unique abilities for a short amount of time. Having said that, it is possible in the very end game to play this class in a build that allows for permanent uptime of the demon form or even completely playing without it. If you've already found a class you would like to main and want to know more about their potential endgame builds and playstyles, you can check out Cannon's class breakdown, as it should give you a good look on what to expect from those classes in the endgame. As you probably have noticed, Lost Ark is an isometric MMO which, while being a rather bland comparison, makes it a game as if World of Warcraft and Diablo had a child that happened to be particularly fond of cleavage and light female body armor. While aesthetics play a big factor in one's enjoyment of a game, regardless of those, Lost Ark's combat feels extremely responsive and fluid, while abilities are always impactful and satisfying. On top of that, it offers really good combat visuals, which can be quite a surprise to some as it isn't exactly next gen. Then again, New World had this gem of a spell, so who am I to speak? Anyway, that is something that you definitely only start feeling once you've tried it yourself, rather than just watch video footage of it. And with the game being free to play, checking it out for yourself is, well, pretty easy. After hitting level 50, you'll get guided towards your first awakening quest, which will unlock your first out of 2 awakening skills, which is basically an ultimate ability with a heavy cooldown and a tiny reagent cost in the form of a chaos shard, and those can be acquired at any general goods merchant for 250 silver apiece. The second skill requires a bit longer to unlock after hitting 50, as it is a reward of a lengthy quest chain in your story progress, but remember that you can only pick one at a time. If you're still on the fence on what class should you potentially main, maybe checking out all of those awakening skills in a video will push you towards a choice, because honestly, they're really sexy. You'll find a link in the video description below. In Lost Ark, there are generally 4 types of abilities that classes can use. The normal ability requires you to only press the button and it will go off. The holding or charging ability either gains in power the longer you wind it up, or requires you to stop holding at the right moment for the ability to go off. The aiming ability is for placing skills on a targeted spot on the ground by right-clicking when you're ready to cast it, or by simply double-clicking your keybind. And lastly, the combo ability, which is kind of a multi-part attack as it allows you to do one of 3 things. You can use it a few times in quick succession with slight delays in between without the combo breaking. You can keep pressing the button for the entire combo chain to complete as fast as possible, or you can simply stop an ongoing combo early by releasing your keybind while the ability is ongoing. Each of those attacks or abilities can come with up to 5 skill attributes, which are categorized as follows. When attacking an enemy from behind while using a skill that has back attack, the skill inflicts 5% bonus damage and has a 10% increased chance to crit, which can usually be further increased through various means of character progression. Most boss encounters will have a stagger bar underneath their HP bar, and once it reaches 0, it will disorient the boss for a while, which usually allows for a burst phase or will sometimes be a soft DPS check, as you might need to break it to stop his current cast. Levels from 1 to 5 dictate the neutralization level of a skill, and your damage does not impact how much neutralization a skill does, as only the hit count and stagger rating matters. In some cases, skills that have a lower stagger rating will inflict higher neutralization damage than those with higher stagger rating due to a bigger hit count. Neutralization can be further increased through skill runes or debuffs, but we'll get back to that later. Part Break is a hidden attribute used in certain mechanics that require you to destroy the parts of an enemy, such as a boss armor break. It can also be inflicted through consumables known as destruction bombs, which we'll also cover later. If a skill or item has Part Break 2, it inflicts 2 HP worth of Part Break. Those parts that can or need to be broken have a hidden separate HP, such as 10. Another consumable known as the Corrosion Bomb can apply a debuff on an enemy, which makes all incoming Part Break abilities apply as if they were 1 level higher. The front attack is the reverse back attack. When hitting the enemy from their front with an attack with this attribute, the skill inflicts 20% more damage and has 10% increased stagger damage. Lastly, skills with the counter attribute will instantly neutralize or stagger a boss when struck from the front during a counterable motion. In order to pull off a counter, the attack must be inflicted from their front and during the short window of time an ability is deemed counterable, which can be seen when the enemy glows blue momentarily. Counterable abilities are typically dashes, but keep in mind that not all bosses can be countered. The harder the endgame content you'll do, the more you'll see necessary counter mechanics. All classes have at least one counter skill, but most will likely not use them since they may be on skills that aren't particularly well suited for your playstyle. So make sure you and your party are aware of your skill choices. It is however important to know your options, as some endgame encounters will eventually require the entire party to use counter skills. While adventuring in the world of Arkesia, you'll meet a wide variety of quests. The main quest is the main story quest, which is automatically accepted starting at the prologue and will be the basis of your adventure in Arkesia. Once you reach around level 37, your main quest will simply tell you to, spoiler alert, to find the missing arcs. From the moment you leave Luterra and start sailing, you can continue the main story on several continents through world quests. Keep in mind that some content may not be available if you do not complete the required world quests. General quests are less important side quests which provide you with some additional lore from the region and can help you complete your adventurer's tome progress in the location, which you'll hear more about later. Some quests are classified as chain quests, where a linked story continues sequentially. Most of the time they offer permanent stat potions as a reward, so they're always worth doing or at the very least going back to. Dungeon quests are automatically accepted when you enter a dungeon and help you find your way through it. Even after completing them once, the quests will be automatically accepted each time you enter the dungeon. Adventure quests can be found on NPCs located on continents and islands you discover while sailing. When you complete some adventure quests, you'll get the chance to acquire an island token or build rapport with NPCs. Some adventure quests can be only accepted and continued once per account, but we'll get back to that as well. Guide quests will appear throughout your progress in the game, which will act as a mini tutorial in order to help you understand some systems and features that you will definitely find in this video. By increasing your rapport, also known as reputations with NPCs, you'll be able to discover new stories that you couldn't learn through quests alone. Those might come with additional new rewards, but more on that later. Southern quests are automatically accepted once you enter a designated area. Conditions for quest failure, such as a time limit or prohibition to go to another area, and if the quest fails, it is automatically deleted from the quest list. Those are always worth doing on your way, as they're usually doable under a minute. Co-op quests are quests that you must complete together with other adventurers. After the quest start notification, the quest area is displayed on the world map, while the cooperative quest is automatically accepted when you enter the area. Rewards are paid based on the contribution made, so be careful as you may not be paid if your contribution was low. Daily quests, also known as Una dailies, can be completed up to 3 times per day. The number of quests that can be completed are reset every day at your local server reset time. You can accept those quests via the Una's task quest panel, which we'll eventually get back to. Weekly quests, also known as Una Weeklies, can be completed up to 3 times per week. Those can also be accepted via the Una's task quest panel. There is no huge benefit in speedrunning in Lost Ark, especially if it's your first playthrough, as the only thing you're technically missing out on are potential daily or weekly lockouts, but you'll get those eventually anyway. If that's however what you're looking for, the best way to do it is to focus entirely on the main and world quest while doing the occasional southern quest if it pops up on your way to your main quest. While speedrunners can tell you that you can reach max level in about 12 hours, if you're new to the game, a more realistic time frame should be closer to 20 hours and up to 40 hours if you're taking your time in discovering the many things Arkesia has to offer along your way. The official max level of your character is considered to be 50, as that is when all of the endgame content unlocks for you. However, having said that, in the Korean version it is possible to reach up to level 60. An important thing to note is that levels from 50 to 60 will only grant you additional skill points every level, and obtaining those is quite a lengthy process, which is basically a long-term character investment reward and should definitely not be the focus of your character progression. This should feel similar to the last few almost unreachable levels in games such as Diablo 2 or Path of Exile. While leveling in Lost Ark, aside from unlocking new abilities, you will also be getting skill points. Those points can be then attributed to skills of your choice, which makes them stronger up to a level 10 rank, while at the same time enabling further customization of them through a system known as tripods, which we'll talk about in a second. Those points can be changed at any given time, as there is no cooldown nor cost of any sort. You can also create some presets so that you can swap around builds quickly, however unlocking more than 3 presets will have to be unlocked through in-game currency. What's important to note is that getting to level level 50 will not grant you enough skill points to max out each of your 8 active abilities, meaning that you'll have to gain additional skill points through endgame activities alongside the ones you'll be gaining while leveling up to 60. All skill points related endgame rewards are usually one-time account bound rewards, which is a very nice thing for any future alts you may have, as they'll start out massively ahead from your first time playing on a fresh account. For a detailed list of where to find all skill points, check out the written summary made by the folks of maxroll.gg. The link will be in the video description. Triports are essentially additional effects or talents, if you prefer, for that particular skill, which can vary from reduced cooldowns, increased effects, to changing its attack type or even complete skill redesign and visual overhaul. This is probably how WoW's Azerite trait should have worked in the first place. Each skill can have a maximum of 3 tripods active at a time, and those are unlocked by attributing skill points to your chosen skill, with tripods unlocking at skills level 4, 7 and 10 for the third one. Once you reach the endgame, most of those tripods can be further increased in level, which will then increase the tripod's overall effect through endgame gear. The better the gear, the higher its additional tripod level will potentially be. As you may have guessed it, a big part of your endgame gear hunt is going to be searching for those tripod effects on gear drops that will match your used skills and build. You can even select your favorite tripods in your skill UI so that you can easily identify potential cool drops when you find them. But as your item level and tiers of content increase, you will eventually have to replace the pieces of gear you're currently wearing into better ones. But don't worry, as thanks to additional features such as the tripod library or gear transfer, the game respects your time and loot hunt and will allow you to apply those once unlocked tripod levels to new pieces of gear so that you can always feel good about getting a better piece or replacing an old one. We'll get back to gear transfer later. Skill runes are going to be yet another layer of skill customization. However, those will come in the form of item drops from endgame content or found from guaranteed reward sources such as a Rapport reward. Each skill may be equipped with 1 rune, and you can have a maximum of 8 runes equipped at a time, including classes that have transformation skills such as a Shadow Hunter's demon form. Since transformation skills cannot be leveled nor granted tripod effects, this allows you to customize them to suit your build or playstyle, such as being a mostly demon form Shadow Hunter. They can freely be equipped and removed from their skills at no cost, and just like with skill points, can be part of a skill preset. Skill runes come in 4 different rarity grades, from the uncommon green to the orange legendary, but it is uncertain if we'll get those 4 at launch. A higher rarity will result in higher stats. And as a side note, while most skill rune effects stack, the bleed rune does not and will always inflict the same amount of bleed damage across all rarities per second, as the grade will only increase its overall bleed duration. For a detailed list of where to find all skill runes, you can check out a written list made by the folks of maxroll.gg. As usual, the link will be in the video description. Next to your character level, on the bottom left of your screen will be something known as roster or roster level. In Lost Ark, all your characters are part of your roster, which is your overall account level. Gaining roster levels is usually obtained by simply playing the game, as almost everything will grant you roster XP. This in turn will reward your account with various rewards which will be always active for your entire account, such as additional stats for all characters or skill points, which will be particularly strong for new alts but becomes less important in the endgame due to scalability. Lost Ark is a very alt-friendly game, to a point of actively encouraging you to make alts if you want to play the game more, as about 90% of the entire game's progress is account bound, with the exception of your character's gear progress, such as for example crafting new item sets or enhancing them further. While many of those roster rewards are one-time account rewards, some of them are not, such as card rewards from certain side quests which are available to complete again on an alt, even though the card system is account bound, but we'll get back to cards later. Having said that, there are many benefits in having alts in Lost Ark, as due to being an MMO revolving about standard daily and weekly resets or lockouts, but with rewards that are not necessarily character bound, such as gold or gear upgrade materials, playing an alt can efficiently further increase your main's character progress, while also keeping things fresh by allowing you to play different characters but still doing the content you want or enjoy. As for example, you should be able to transfer some gear upgrades from your alt's Chaos Dungeon runs into your main. Playing alts is by no means necessary, but can definitely be helpful if you want to play a lot. It's an interesting change from other MMOs which usually make playing alts not that viable, while in Lost Ark you can essentially be competitive on many characters at once, while at the same time having different alts just for PvP content, as most of it is fully equalized and very easily accessible. But we'll get back to PvP later. In Lost Ark, during your leveling adventures, you'll find that you will take part in various story dungeons which you'll need to complete in order to progress the story further. Those can be either completed solo or with a pre-made or match-made party and have the option of a slightly harder difficulty that rewards you with better loot. However, those items are generally replaced quickly within a few levels, so unless you want the additional challenge, most players opt out of doing the harder mode. While this type of solo or group play will remain in some form or another in the endgame content, such as through Guardian raids or Chaos dungeons, content like Abyss Dungeons will require you to have a full party. We'll get back to those in a later section in the video. If you've managed to arrive at this point of the compendium, it is likely you have already seen various tier lists about every class in the game, as it is, well, let's call it a popular topic to discuss by many players. Allow me then to start this topic with a few heavy hitters. No matter which class you pick, it can and will complete all of the content the game has to offer, and this includes later tiers of content that the Korean server and players have already completed. In my opinion, there are 5 major factors to consider in PvE. Support classes, notably paladins and bards, are considered to be superior just because they're wanted by every party, but that also means that you generally want to avoid having 2 in a group, as they do not contribute as much DPS as other classes, making a standard party have generally 1 support and 3 different DPS. Every class in the game has some form of party buff or applies debuffs on enemies, essentially making all classes valuable. Having said that, buffs or debuffs from the same classes in the party do not stack, which is why it's recommended to never have 2 of the same class in the party. There are plenty of ways of customizing your class through gear and enhancement in Lost Ark, but most importantly, being able to play it to its fullest potential is by far the biggest DPS contributing factor, as the difference in DPS between 2 equally geared players but of different skill level can really be wild, sometimes doubling or tripling the DPS of another party member, regardless of the classes played. While there are no ways of measuring your DPS in real time, it is possible to measure your DPS on a specific training dummy which is available in the training grounds, also known as Trixion, but we'll get back to those in a bit. Additionally, in party content such as Abyss Dungeons, at the end of a run you will get a screen score which details your party and individual performances, allowing you to measure your overall performance and damage in regards to other group members. My only recommendation is that you pick a class that fits your playstyle the most, as playing your class well is all that will matter in the end. That is assuming that you follow the party and group synergies rules, which we'll get back in just a second. As mentioned before, once you reach around level 31, you will obtain a way to get into Trixion, also known as the Proving Grounds, through a teleportation song. In there, you'll have a vastly enhanced mode of the one you saw when creating a new class. In here, you can apply all the skill, engravings, and stat points you want as if you were deep into the endgame, which will allow you to test out various builds as well as measure the potential DPS of your build on a target dummy, as you will find one in the room. If you want to go wild, you can also have no cooldown on abilities, so you can go hard on those awakening skill spam, but consider that my epilepsy warning to you. In Lost Ark, going back to the PvE tier list topic, all classes have some form of group buff or target debuff with the exception of support classes, which are a tier of their own as they usually provide both on top of some heals, shields, or variety like mana regeneration. It is important to know that while the same class buffs or debuffs do not stack within one party of 4, a typical raid size consists of 8 players, which means 2 parties of 4. Since utility does not work outside of your own party, it is not recommended to have a party of overlapping classes, such as 2 Shadow Hunters, as you'll be essentially wasting a party buff or debuff. However, having 2 of them in a raid setting is perfectly fine, as they'll each be within their own 4-player party. As you're about to see, buffs and debuffs can be categorized in 4 main categories and 2 uptime distinctions. A low uptime means an average of 25%, which is usually a 6-second burst window on a 24-second cooldown. A high uptime is essentially up 100% of the time, such as a debuff lasting 6 seconds but applied through an ability on a 5-second cooldown. Combining the same categories of buffs onto classes that benefit from those the most, such as classes preferring critical strikes, will usually make for a stronger party synergy. A special mention goes to the wildcard category, which offers unique party tools which can be very powerful in dealing with certain mechanics on an encounter, as the artillerist can increase a boss's stagger damage taken and lower his armor for 4 seconds, while the gunlancer is treated as a flex support class due to his vast adaptable party toolkit. From armor debuffs to attack speed or crit buffs, on top of having access to a taunt ability, he's generally more than welcome to any party. PvP is something that your character unlocks once you arrive at your first major town in the game, which is around level 26. You honestly can't miss it, as the main story quest will lead you to it. By clicking on your newly acquired Colosseum icon near your minimap, you will access the PvP UI, in which you'll find a variety of modes. But before we cover those, the most important thing to note is that PvP in those modes is fully equalized, which means that by clicking on this button known as the Book of Coordination, you'll be able to create and customize character templates with all stats, skills and awakenings you like, as if you had a fully maxed out character, with the exception of engravings and skill runes due to potential balance issues. This also means that if all you want to do in Lost Ark is PvP, you just simply level a character to 26 and that's it. There are no chores or any necessary character maintenance you need to do in order to be competitive in those modes. It's going to be quite an incredible feeling if you were ever into World of Warcraft PvP like myself. If you're wondering what stats are generally recommended for your class in PvP, I'll link you a document created by Lino in the video description which should answer all your remaining questions. The standard PvP mode is the Team Deathmatch, in which 2 teams of 3 face off against each other in a 6-minute match, with the last minute buffing everyone's damage. This means that you can only use your awakening skill once per match. The second is a free-for-all mode, which is about as hectic as you'd imagine, putting 6 players against each other in an arena. The third is known as Last Team Standing or Team Elimination, which is a series of 1v1 duels between 2 teams of 3, which is a really good mode to learn how to PvP as it's easier to manage, while at the same time allowing you to solo the entire enemy team if you are that good, because as long as you win, you remain in the arena, however your HP nor cooldowns do not reset in between opponents. While you can generally queue with friends for all PvP content, the one exception is the ranked mode, which is exclusively solo queue in Team Deathmatch. Smilegate has went on record that while this might change at some point in the future, the current idea is that by having the ranked mode being solo queue only creates a healthier gameplay environment without forcing heavy meta choices onto players, especially since in Lost Ark PvP your personal skill is much more important than having a class considered by some to be stronger. With 7 league tiers and end of season mostly cosmetic rewards for each tier, with the best ranks even granting you in-game cash shop money on top, the important thing to know is that you have an MMR bonus for your first 100 ranked games played. And with your rank being account-wide as well, I highly recommend practicing in normal games before going into ranked gameplay. Keep in mind there's also an MMR DK system active for longer periods of ranked inactivity, just so you cannot sit on your rank forever if you actually want to compete. Next up we have the Co-op Battles tab, which are 3 rotating battleground team-based events and can only be queued on the given time period. They are similar in concept to basic World of Warcraft battleground maps, such as take control points and bases in order to gain score points. Lastly, you can also create custom games with friends and observers watching, which is always a very nice thing to have. While I've mentioned the rank system being solo queue only with mostly cosmetic rewards, there is another PvP ranking system present in the game, which is actually more important for most, as briefly saying will feel familiar to those that dabbled with WoW Classic's original PvP system. All PvP content and activities you will be doing will grant you PvP experience points based on your performance in matches or events, which means more kills and more damage equals more points. Those will in turn help you gain PvP ranks with each weekly reset up until a final PvP rank. The higher your rank will be, the higher the amount of PvP currency you'll receive with each weekly reset. There is however a small weekly loss of experience points which becomes increasingly bigger the higher your PvP rank becomes. This however will likely go unnoticed for most, as until you're at the very top ranks, the amount of PvP experience loss is pretty insignificant and is more of an incentive to participate in PvP activities. With this PvP currency, you can obtain quite a few useful things such as gear material upgrades of all kinds, but there is a weekly limit on how much you can buy just so you don't feel like having to PvP 24/7 for those. You can obtain even more things once you reach the required PvP rank, from legendary crate mounts to cosmetics or even XP potions for alts, as well as a special PvP badge which will increase your PvP prowess in outdoor PvP content, as that one is not equalized and your gear will matter if you'd like to participate in those. Lastly, with the PvP currency being account bound, you can definitely have strictly PvP alts that you just got to level 26, then proceed to spending that currency to progress your main character's gear. In order to understand and do well in Lost Ark PvP, you will need to grasp the 3 basic pillars of PvP gameplay. And although those mechanics are not exclusive to PvP as they are present in PvE as well, it is generally a lot more important in PvP. Let's start off with dashes, as all classes have access to those. The first one is the spacebar dash, which will move you rapidly in the direction of your cursor, with the exception of the Gun Lancer, who has a small jump backwards. It's an important primary movement skill which varies in cooldown depending on your class, with the general rule being more agile classes having a shorter spacebar dash cooldown. While you're in a dash animation, you're considered immune to all forms of crowd control. The second one is the get up from a knockdown faster dash, or however you want to call it, which is also used by pressing spacebar. This one can only be activated if you're in a knockdown state and have a separate longer cooldown than your normal dash. As this is kind of a get out of jail free card, make sure to not use it recklessly, as better players will use your lack of escape tool to their advantage. Next up we have super armors. While looking at different skill attributes as well as tripods, you'll notice that you can have different levels of resistance labeled on an ability. Super armor skills are generally a very good pick for PvP encounters, as it will allow you to cast them without having them break by any hit stun or paralysis effect, which I'll cover in just a second. Classes without access to lots of super armor options on skills are considered to be a bit weaker in PvP arenas, as they require proper gameplay and positioning in order to be effective. This is because your abilities can be easily interrupted. Lastly, we have crowd controls, and with the competitive game mode being generally 3v3, managing your CC abilities is crucial both for offense and defense. Before picking any skills, however, make sure you use the Alt button on a skill to see its changed value in PvP, as most CC abilities have the reduction halved. In Lost Ark, there are 4 main types of CC. Hit stun will happen when you just get hit by regular attacks and abilities with no additional properties. Since this state can only happen while you are walking or standing still, you can simply counter this by using your auto attack to avoid being put in a hit stun state. Paralysis is considered a stronger hit stun, as it will force a hit stun state, meaning that it can interrupt abilities being casted that do not have paralysis immunity. You can, however, become immune to them for a brief moment once you see a scale icon appear on your head. Knock-ups, knockdowns and knockbacks are all part of the same family and will have your character juggle midair then put down, a position from which you can use your spacebar dash to get back up in order to get away from danger faster. Lastly, hard CC, of which there are many types, from fears to stuns and electrocutes, and those will pierce almost all abilities and resistances, with the exception of a dash, an awakening skill and some identity skills. After being hit by one of these, you'll notice a white barrier with a blue loading bar appear on top of a player's head. This will indicate he is now immune to any form of hard CCs for 7 seconds, so use that to your advantage. If you want to find out more in-depth crowd control tricks, check out Lino's guide, which will be linked in the video description, as it is really excellent. In this final part of PvP gameplay coverage, something that is also very important but definitely not obvious is that widescreen 21:9 ratio monitors have actually an edge in Lost Ark PvP, as they see a bit more of the battlefield than your average 16:9 screen. While this is definitely a bit annoying, the game allows you through software scaling to scale into a 21:9 aspect ratio in your game video settings, effectively putting you on an even field. While this is by no means necessary, if you want to become a competitive PvP player, it is highly recommended to do so. And while on the topic of not so obvious things, your and your enemy's field of view is actually rotated by 90 degrees, which means that by managing your battlefield positions well, it is actually possible for you to hit your opponents from an angle from which they cannot see you, which is a mechanic you should be trying to use to your advantage at all times, as it is a major factor in becoming a good PvP player. If you're looking once again for a more in-depth field of view and camera guide, I'll link you Lino's video in the video description. As mentioned in the PvE tier list section, a PvP tier list is once again quite subjective, as due to Lost Ark PvP being equalized and, as you may have seen by now, is also quite skill intensive. This means that any balance patch can drastically change what some would perceive better or worse. For any tier lists out there you might have already seen, they usually assume both different patch versions as well as a different class roster, as the Western release will have a unique choice of classes available, effectively having an entirely new PvP meta. Having said that, there are 3 main factors to consider when talking about PvP tier list of classes. Some classes are heavily dependent on certain team setups, meaning that even if you saw that some class is considered to be S tier, it might not be S tier in every match due to the ranked solo queue mode pairing you with non-premade groups or comps. While supports are considered to be top tier at the highest level of play, they rely heavily on your team playing properly, which means that at the low or beginner level, especially the Bard, your experience can actually be pretty dramatic and feel extremely weak. The consensus is that easier to pick up classes for beginners with access to lots of super armor options will generally perform better than those that require very good gameplay in order to be effective. On top of that, some classes are much better or even excellent at lower ranks while being only average when facing good players. This leads me to the conclusion that classes should generally be at least divided into low rank and high rank performance. So if you're really asking for it, this is how I would place them on a graph. And since I will not be diving into more class details in this video, feel free to pause it or tell me in the comments why do you think I'm wrong with my picks and list, as I will now be moving to the next topic. Even though the game is fully free to play, it offers founder packs which are expected to get removed once the game launches, so likely around mid-February. In short, I'll try to quickly dissect the real value of those packs. The bronze one costs $15 and offers no real value aside from the 3-day early access, as you'll be offered a pet at the start of the game which we'll cover in a bit. And while the aura is a minor sub fee replacement that offers various very practical and cool bonuses, it can be bought with crystal gems which are obtained by in-game gold if you want to stay fully free to play. The silver costs $25, and with the additional 1000 crystals on top of those offered crates and what you will get in them, this makes it the best quality price offer with lots of very useful goodies which will serve you for weeks to come. The gold and platinum have only 2 additional things worth noting, the first of which is the character expansion slot, which allows you to have 7 instead of 6 characters on your server, and by extension your account. But even if you plan on playing this many characters, you can probably use the 1000 crystals from the silver pack to buy an additional slot in the future anyway. The second thing are exclusive avatars, which are basically visual skins, but be careful as the gold package skin can be worn by all subclasses of a class, which means if you pick the warrior one, you'll be able to wear it as a paladin, gunlancer and berserker, while the platinum exclusive skin is only one limited skin to one subclass of your choice, for example just the paladin. While those skins were sellable on the auction house in other regions, a German community manager did state on a post that they will not be sellable on the in-game auction house, so it might be the only time you can get one of those if you really want one. While those packs offer some additional things, mainly an increased amount of real money currency, they do not offer you anything of real value that you won't get anyway by playing the game, aside from, of course, well, those royal crystals. Those can undeniably buy you many gear speed ups, which would some consider to be pay to win, and we'll definitely go back to this topic at the end of this video. Ultimately, it is a question of whether you're comfortable with paying that much money on a free-to-play game for honestly no real benefits aside from those unique visual skins. I'll leave a link to those skins and how they look in the game in the video description. To conclude this topic, those founder packs actually stack on your account, so if you really want, you could in theory buy all 4 of them. Skins, also known in Lost Ark as avatars, are actually items that you can obtain and wear, as your character page has its own skin tab in which you'll want to equip skin items. Those will grant you some very minor bonuses based on their rarity. Before you freak out and think that, wait a minute, does that mean those platinum skins are pay to win? The answer is no, it only really appears that way. So let me explain you why. As you can see on this example, any epic rarity skin piece will grant you a 1% bonus to your main stat. However, what isn't clear is that this is only a 1% increase to the base main stat of your class, without the effect of gear. To put things into perspective, a max level character has about 1000 main stat without any gear equipped, making that only a bonus of 10 primary stat. While you may still feel like it's a bit much, when your character gets geared up in tier 3 gear, you can actually get above 100,000 main stat, so as you can see, 10 main stat in comparison is quite insignificant. Having said that, skin pieces in Lost Ark can be obtained from various sources, from dungeon drops to achievement unlocks, so don't worry about those founder skins, as you'll get those skin stats regardless if you buy anything or not. There's also a skin casino, or gacha if you prefer, which allows you to spend cloth, which is a specific skin currency you get from dismantling other skins that you do not want, in order to unlock random skin pieces of your subclass, which is just an additional way of trying to get something that you haven't gotten before. With most skins being sellable on the auction house for gold, make sure to first check if there's something you might want to sell or buy instead of just using the casino feature. And just one more thing, while obtaining epic rarity skins will not be a big issue if you're just looking for the stat bonuses, especially since you can craft epic versions of blue skin pieces at the skin crafting NPC, legendary rarity is something that will be very hard to obtain, as they're generally inaccessible unless paid or casino rolled for. Once you manage to obtain a legendary skin piece, however, it will actually unlock a new skin slot, allowing you to wear any appearance you want over it while still keeping the increased legendary skin stat bonus, making them a very desirable long-term goal for players to obtain. If you took a closer look during the skins footage, you'd notice they gave secondary stats called virtues, which are kind of a role-playing stat which will feel similar to light or dark side choices you could make in the Star Wars MMO, just to give you an idea. Those stats will then be used when talking with various NPCs related to the Rapport system, or reputation system if you prefer, as we'll get back to this topic in just a second. By reaching certain thresholds in those stats, which are mostly gained from side activities such as collectibles and side quests, you'll be able to discover new lore and dialogue, gain additional report points with those specific NPCs, or even unlock additional content. The Rapport system is a system very similar to World of Warcraft's reputation system, only more interesting as this one didn't stay the same for 18 years. Over the course of your adventures across Arkesia, you'll find plenty of NPCs which will be Rapport NPCs, meaning that you can earn their trust by doing various activities for them, from doing quests to playing songs. Yes, songs. all the way up to bringing them report gifts, which are very specific items that you can give them in exchange for report progress with them. You should know that some items give more points than others depending on which they like the most. I do however recommend on not giving out your high tier report gifts left and right before being committed to a certain NPC reward. The amount of report progress and content is absolutely massive and will take a completionist many months to complete all of it, so don't stress about it and progress with the system at your own pace, knowing that they gave out many useful rewards at various trust levels, from gold to stat potions or even engraving books. And yes, before you ask the question, I'll leave a link in the video description to a neat document created by the Saint Guild, in which you'll find a depicted infographic of what type of character you should be potentially focusing on first with your report adventures, with the general rule being focusing on the ones that give you rewards that you might be after at that given time. Just make sure to actually open your report UI and claim those rewards if you have any left over that you didn't notice you could have received. Pets, or rather your pet, is a key feature in your day-to-day gameplay in Lost Ark, as they essentially work as an auto-item pickup. While any of the founder's packs will grant you a pet right when you start the game, you will get one anyway in the very beginning of your adventure, so do not stress about it. Since they'll be running around you a lot, if you want you can actually hide them in the game setting just so that you don't have to see a bunny running around you all the time. While that is their main purpose, they actually offer additional bonuses as well, which may or may not come with a maintenance fee in our Western release, so don't take my word for it. Your active pet can grant you combat buffs for the price of 120 gems, which will remain active for 30 days, acting essentially like a very small sub fee. At that price tag, it's a really minor cost once you reach level 50, as you should be able to earn that much in just a day worth of daily activities. Those prices are based on the beta client, but at the same time, in the beta this buff was unlocked by default and didn't require payment, so maybe that cost will get removed after all. Since the bonus you get on a pet once received is rolled randomly, what you can do is you can visit a pet trainer and pay a very small fee of 7 gems to change and roll the desired stats you might be after in his pet buff. You can even unlock additional functions such as remote access to your personal stash or remote repair of items. But once again, it is unknown if it will be tied to a gem fee, as each game version had a different way of tackling the system. Since those stats or buffs remain for good on your pets, there is a benefit in owning more if you'd ever like to change your currently active bonuses, making it always worth adding another one to your collection with different stats, if you'd like to have another preset for a different build. Lastly, pets also come with a certain ability which will help you counter Stronghold missions, meaning that getting more pets will always be beneficial, but we'll get back to that. Mounts in Lost Ark work in a bit unusual way. While all mounts in the game have the same base movement speed and offer no real combat benefit, as you can't really mount anywhere where combat is present, they do differ from one another with more than just visuals. All mounts have their own spacebar dash ability, which is a very short speed burst. However, a better quality mount has its spacebar dash cooldown reduced compared to a common one. Additionally, higher rarity mounts can also come with their special ability, which can be all sorts of things. From a small jump to a minor sprint boost, others may just be purely cosmetic or visual. Congratulations if you've made it this far, because to quote South Park, now we can finally play, or in this case, talk about the game. From this point forward, I'll try to cover things that you'll encounter in your day-to-day gameplay, as well as all the activities in the game, so wish me luck. Before we dive in, however, let me just preface that even though Lost Ark is a heavily endgame focused MMO, contrary to other MMOs which usually get better after 100 hours, well, with the exception of New World actually becoming worse after 100 hours, the fun itself, in my opinion, is present everywhere and at all times, as you'll have so much to discover and do at all stages of the game, as you'll always be offered some form of useful reward or meaningful progress. At the same time, there's even more coming in the very near future. Honestly, the only thing I feel could get improved is the leveling experience, as after you've done it at least once, even though there are ways to get more experience on alts, being forced to only follow the main story quest in order to level is not something most would like to repeat many times over. Now we'll talk about your alts passively leveling even when you're not playing a bit later. Life skills in Lost Ark are essentially gathering professions that you can invest in and level up, which will result in obtaining better rewards and taking you less time. They will allow you to collect various materials and resources in the open world in order to either sell on the auction house for quite a bit of profit, especially in early launch, as well as craft a variety of goodies, from potions to battle items all the way up to getting better ships and upgrading your stronghold, which we'll get back a bit later. Since I've mentioned gathering in the open world, keep in mind that resources on a map are finite, so you will eventually meet some competitors which will definitely impact your ability to gather efficiently, especially in early launch. The maps, however, usually have different layers available at the same time, allowing you to switch up manually with this button near your minimap if you'd like to do so. If you're in a crowded spot with life skill competitors, use that to your advantage, but be careful as there is a limit on how many times you can swap. You will have access to all 6 life skills from the beginning, and you won't be limited in which you want to use. However, all life skills leveling is done by using that specific life skill to get the materials, but you will be limited by something known as life skill energy. Using any life skill will consume your life skill energy, which is an account-bound resource. This meter regenerates at a rate of about 4,000 energy per day, with a max cap of 10,500. Once you're out of energy, you simply won't be able to continue gathering materials until you replenish some energy, so try to never stay at the energy cap as you're essentially losing out on potentially free gold. There are ways to restore life skill energy faster through specific potions, but they are usually obtained through rare crates or blue gems and gold, so let's just say they're not easily obtainable. Having said that, since you'll get better at your chosen life skills by gaining levels in them, it is usually recommended to pick the ones you'll want to focus on to remain effective. All crafting will usually be done in your personal stronghold, but in order to be able to craft an item in the first place, you will need the recipe for it, but I'll cover that a bit later. Now allow me to quickly break them all down. Foraging is all about gathering herbs and will always be a consistent money source as it is used to craft potions and most battle items or consumables. If you weren't tired of chopping down trees in New World, here's your second chance at it. By using logging and chopping down trees, you'll obtain timber, which is used for your stronghold improvements as well as ship construction. It will most likely be very profitable early on, but eventually will drop in price as the community has less things to build over time. Mining will have you running around with your pickaxe, which in turn will grant you iron ores. Those are used mostly for stronghold improvements as well as for some life skill tools, which means that in general it will also be highly profitable early on, but will have its value lowered over time. Hunting will have you throwing axes at poor rabbits and other wild animals. Those materials will then be used for some cooking stat buffs, which will always be valuable, but we'll get back to that. Fishing will have you Netflix and fish, which will result in some cooking reagents as well as pearls if you're lucky. Those can be worth a lot, as they can be used in endgame gear enhancement, especially if it's widely unavailable on the market in early launch. Excavating will have you run around as Indiana Jones in open world areas in order to find secret maps or certain collectibles. You can even score a jackpot by having a very small chance in obtaining tool craft kits, which are required to lever your life skill tools and are always extremely valuable and rare. While it is widely perceived as the most profitable life skill in the long term, it is usually subject to heavy player competition in open world areas. This results in your gathering runs lasting usually way longer than any other life skill, making it a decent reward for your time commitment. Don't forget to change map layers if the system allows you to when met with competition. Each life skill has its own level, and with each level you will increase your gathering proficiency. Awards from levels include increased gathering speed, better rewards, less tool durability loss, as well as new gathering abilities and chances at activating a gathering minigame, which when done successfully will result in even more rewards. Foraging will net you with the golden fingers, a stackable buff which will increase your herb gathering speed. Logging will allow you to kick down a tree in one swoop for more rewards, or even sawing down a tree with a friend, making it faster while both of you will receive rewards, so invest in a friendly lumberjack buddy now. Mining will allow you to detonate ores for more rewards, and in order to maximize value from this, make sure to first hit a node, then explode it afterwards, or try exploding 2 nodes at a time if possible. Hunting will allow you to place traps, which will attract and summon greater wildlife forms. Fishing will allow you to place down a fishing net, then come back after about 10 to 15 minutes for a minigame and extra rewards, making it the perfect Netflix or alt-tab profession. And lastly, excavating will allow you to summon a puppy who will help you by sniffing out some treasures. As you've heard before, using a life skill requires a life skill tool. These come in various rarities and can roll a random special effect when obtained. Life skill tools have a durability meter which depletes as you use the skill. You can repair your tools at the cost of silver, but each time you do, their max durability will lower by a small amount per repair. While it is possible to restore their max durability by resharpening them, doing so requires special crystals which are mostly obtained from blue gems, which are by extension gold, or repaired through consumables made in your stronghold, but generally isn't worth doing unless you have a high quality tool. Once your tool is pretty damaged, you should simply buy a new green one from a vendor, as higher grade tools for the most part only grant you higher grade location specific resources, but those are not used in high quantities and actually won't be that valuable in the long run, since all tools randomly generate traits upon acquisition. acquisition, what you can do is simply buy green tools at an NPC until you roll super armor on them, a trait that will make your gathering life much more comfortable, as the occasional wildlife will no longer interrupt your gatherings. Those items only cost 1500 silver a piece, so it's pretty cheap. And now for some additional information. All profession nodes give a common material as well as a chance for uncommon and rare materials. This chance increases with better quality tools and by having a higher life skill level. The green uncommon material depends on the node, while the blue rare material is based on your location, such as a specific region, but as mentioned before, you should be fine gathering most of the time with the green trade tools. The excavating minigame only gives good rewards if you succeed all 3 times. If you fail on the first or second attempt, you can hit escape and then the next dig site that you uncover will have the minigame for you to try again. World Tree Leaves and Platinum Field tickets are special collectibles and event entries which you can obtain from any profession node in the world, meaning that you cannot obtain those in your Stronghold farm, and I'll cover those in a second. And while I haven't covered the Stronghold yet, one of the things you will be able to unlock in it is your very own personal farm. Life materials gathered from there are entirely different from those in the world and are bound to you. They can be used for crafts but require their own recipe, meaning that you cannot mix and match materials from your farm and the world. Additionally, life skilling in your farm consumes more energy than if you were to do it in the open world, but as a result, the yield isn't bad. The idea is that it's a quick and easy way to use some of your life skill energy just so it doesn't go over your cap. Fishing is generally for those who want to earn gold but don't want the stress of world node competition, and as a result is also significantly slower than other life skills in terms of energy consumption. As mentioned before, while doing life skills in the open world, you have a chance to obtain a Platinum Field entry ticket. The Platinum Fields are a special life skill timed event that you can sign up to with a ticket which will have you pick one of 2 maps. The Manor map focuses on mining, logging and foraging, while the Garden map is all about fishing, excavating and hunting. While you can complete both solo, it is usually a lot better and easier to go into the Manor map as a group of at least 3 players, as by teaming up and doing the objectives properly, you'll be able to unlock an additional room of rewards which is unobtainable when playing solo, as in this mode you'll be trying to gather as many resources as possible before the timer runs out. For more in-depth information and route guides on how to do it best in a group, I recommend Shan Damon's Platinum Fields video, which I'll link in the video description. Once you reach around level 37, you'll be granted your very own ship, which will open up the possibility of sailing out into the open world. This is also the time where you'll change from going after the main quests and now onto world quests. There are 8 ships that you can collect while playing the game from various different sources, which you can see on the top of your screen. Each will come with different sailing stats and abilities, so let's have a look at those. While docked in a port, on the right side you'll see your ship's stats, such as its sailing speed and its level, as ships also come with levels which can be upgraded up to level 11 in Korea. However, this might be lower in the Western patch. Leveling a ship will result in better stats as well as crew spots and water resistances. In order for you to upgrade ships, you'll need 2 things. Ship parts, which are obtained from crafting at an NPC in major towns from mining and logging life skill materials, as well as special wood and materials, which can in turn be obtained from 2 different ship merchants found near ports around the world. Better merchants will likely be found in more dangerous places, but those merchants usually accept payment in pirate and other sea coins, which is a currency obtained from a wide variety of sea content, as well as Stronghold naval missions, which we'll cover later. Ships are visually customizable, from changing sails to even using visual skins, altering its entire model, on top of granting some additional stats, but those are often rewarded from either long quest chains and collectible rewards or potentially in the cash shop. Below the ship's stats you can see something as water resistances, as while sailing out in the ocean you'll encounter various kelp formations, hazardous waters or other frozen seas, which will either slow you down, reduce your durability at a rapid pace or simply block you from passing through. This means that some ships are better suited for different types of waters or seas, as you can freely change which one you want to sail out with whenever you're docked in a shipyard. While most ship stats are generally equal and come with trade-offs such as increased durability but slower sailing speed, the fastest ship in the game you can obtain is dubbed the Astray, but you can definitely call it Bobby Kodak's yacht, as obtaining it is quite an expensive achievement. Another popular choice is the Isto, as it is a well-balanced, convenient ship which you can most definitely use everywhere and obtainable from the main storyline quest. A ship's durability is a limit of how long can you sail out in the open seas before having to go to a dock and repair it. But don't worry, as if you happen to lose all your durability and sink in the ocean, you actually become a ghost ship. This will force you to dock at any area and repair your ship to recover its durability. The not worrying part is because if you need to sail to a very distant place, sometimes becoming a ghost ship and getting to your destination instead of repairing it several times will actually cost you less silver. On the left you can see a crew UI, as alongside collecting ships, you'll also be hiring various crew members. A higher level ship will allow for more crew members at a time. They're basically followers that will also have their own level, which you can recruit for your cause by signing a contract with them. You can obtain them through various means, from quest chains and sailing content to Stronghold and ship merchants, as well as a lengthy collectible reward. Low quality ones will usually like to work only on certain ships, while the better ones will be just fine with whichever one you choose to sail out with. By that logic, focus on obtaining the better ones. Those sailors will be of assistance to you in two main places. The first being when out sailing, they'll provide you with additional ship buffs, while the second one is your Stronghold naval missions, a topic we'll explore in just a second. Once you're ready to go out sailing into the ocean, here's a few things that you should know. Your skills UI will get replaced with your ship abilities, which can vary from treasure scanning to throwing out nets and harpoons, which will come in handy in various sea adventures you'll be doing in the open world. This is going to be an endgame activity that we'll cover later. Using your spacebar will allow you to do a quick speed burst that replenishes over time, while using the default T keybind will allow you to auto-sail so you don't have to click all the time. Another more practical way for that, however, is using Alt plus left click on your map, which will allow you to queue up to 4 auto-sail trajectories. Lastly, in order for you to not spend an eternity sailing either, once docked in a port, you can use a triport teleport from one port to another as long as it has been previously discovered, but I'll talk more about moving around the world in a bit. After arriving in your first major city around level 26, you'll be introduced to your own private stronghold or housing system if you prefer. This is actually an entire customizable island just for you, so enjoy Arkesia's capitalistic world. Before I delve into this topic, let me preface this by giving out a small public service announcement. Participating in Stronghold content and its subsystems is not mandatory and can be skipped if you really don't want to. Having said that, your Stronghold will be a source of great benefits and bonuses, from materials and convenience to gold generation or even passive out leveling, so I highly advise not negating it. Getting your base up to speed is a process that will take many weeks, but only requires minimal maintenance, as most of it is done through research upgrades which usually take many hours to complete. If you happen to fall in love in Lost Ark or even play the game for longer than a few weeks, you'll eventually regret disregarding your Stronghold in the past. And now let's get back on topic. Your island and Stronghold, aside from being visually customizable in something akin to the original Sims experience, as you'll be decorating it with collectible buildings and items, and well, would you look at that. It actually stays so faithful to the Sims experience that you can even trap your own alt characters alongside befriended Rapport NPCs that were foolish enough to accept your invitation to an inescapable tiny island. But enough joking around and on to more serious topics. Getting in and out of your Stronghold is done through your Stronghold song, which will be given to you upon arrival, but we'll get back to songs later. While in your Stronghold, you'll be able to open up a Stronghold UI, in which you'll see on the top of your screen 5 different tabs or categories if you prefer, in which you'll be doing most of your activities. Before we delve into those, let me add that most Stronghold activities will have a Stronghold energy cost or action energy added on top of other materials or gold. You can see a counter displayed on the bottom of your screen. Spending this energy on various researches will grant you an appropriate amount of Stronghold XP, on top of the research itself. As with most things in Lost Ark, your Stronghold has a level of its own, up to a maximum of 70, with higher levels being required for better upgrades, which in turn will grant you better bonuses. In the lab, you'll be able to start set upgrades which will help you unlock most features, such as new crafting recipes or even reduced mission cost or action energy spent. As mentioned before, I highly recommend having always an active research going, as they usually last for many hours or even days. Those research will cost you action energy, gold, as well as logging and mining resources. While their time of completion can be decreased with blue gems, which is basically gold, it's probably the worst way you can spend gold in the game, so I highly advise against doing so. The crafting workshop is where you'll be doing all your related life skill crafting, ranging from Stronghold buildings to battle items and potions. In order to craft anything, however, you'll usually need to obtain your required recipe first, which you can get from different world sources or the lab research tab. You can even see the aforementioned farm products tab, which are crafts made from gathering life skills in your Stronghold farm that do not mix and match with regular outdoor life skill materials. The recipes for those crafts are unlockable through the lab, while the farm itself is a level 15 Stronghold reward. The manor will provide buffs and bonuses to activities within the Stronghold, such as reducing action energy costs for specific activities, gold, and materials required. This will be done by equipping special structures onto the manor, such as fountains, mailboxes, and more. In order to get them, you'll first need to obtain the recipe in the lab, then craft it at the crafting workshop. Early on, you'll be limited to one slot, but you can freely switch between equipped structures in case you'd like to change up a bonus. Lastly, there's also a second outfit tab within the Manor menu, where you can display collected outfits to gain additional passive bonuses. Outfits are obtained by maxing out your rapport with certain NPCs. Trade merchants are various NPCs that will come to visit your stronghold and offer you various goods in exchange for mission seals. They refresh once every 6 hours, however that time is to be confirmed, and each time bring you a new set of items available for purchase. In order to allow merchants into your stronghold, you must first sign a contract with them via research at the lab. You can also visit other people's strongholds to check their merchants and potentially use that to your benefit. This station is for you all players out there, your dreaded garrison mission table, or in other words, a very basic mobile game style mission. However, in Lost Ark, you won't need add-ons to do it for you and actually has great hidden features. Those missions will also be your main source of stronghold experience as compared to other stronghold activities. In there, you'll find two types of missions. The normal missions will offer you a wide selection of naval missions to complete, which will reward you with the rewards of your choice. Notice that I've said naval missions, that is because in Lost Ark, those missions will be completed by sending your ships alongside sailors and pets that you might have in your collection. Each ship, sailor, and pet will come with a different mission table ability which will help you counter said missions so that you reach a higher percentage success rate. But don't worry about that too much either, as you cannot actually fail missions. The percentage you see is basically a reward estimate, meaning that at 50% success rate, you'll only get 50% of the rewards. And to keep things simple, you can just use the auto team setup button for the game to pick the best combination out of your available ships, sailors, and pets. Sending out missions will cost you as usual action energy, gold, as well as basic mining and logging materials. They will however reward you with pirate coins and stronghold seals amongst other things, which can be exchanged for various character enhancements or additional sailors at the trader in your stronghold. This also means that having access to more of those ships and followers will allow you to send more missions at the same time. Fear not, however, as even if you send out your only pet on a mission, you can still have him in the open world just so you're not stuck without the auto loot system. The second mission type are special missions. Similar to normal ones in their cost, they will however have a different purpose, as instead of doing small missions, here you'll be sending out your task force to complete your normal lockout content such as Chaos Dungeons, Cube Dungeons, or even Guardian Raids, which are endgame activities we'll talk about later. Those missions will award you with the same rewards as if you had done that content normally with your character, but that is assuming you have a 100% mission success rate. Completing those missions will use up the same special resources or daily limits as these activities would normally cost if you were to do them yourself, so what's the point, you ask? Well, in general, it is not worth sending your crew to complete those special tasks. However, that was never their point, as they're designed to help you gather rewards from reset-based content that you wouldn't be able to complete, for example, due to lack of time, making this an extremely cool system to have if you can't play for more than a few minutes in a week. The Training tab is the last UI tab you'll unlock after completing some Stronghold quest at level 50. In here, you'll be able to train, which means level, any of your alt characters passively. There is however a disclaimer to note about the system since it works differently in each region. The first version of it allows characters of level 50 and above to use the passive training function up to 2 levels below your highest level character. This means that this system is designed for your alts that have already reached level 50 while your main is for example 54. Using this system does not lock out those characters from gameplay, so it's essentially free experience points that you generate over time. Just make sure to collect the XP at least once a week in the training UI, as it can stack to a maximum of 7 days. In some versions of the game this training did cost energy, while in others it was free. The second version offers an additional great feature that may or may not come to the Western release, known as Knowledge Transfer. This feature allows you to grant one free level to an alt for a small gold fee each time any of your characters gained one. This means that for each character you get level 50 with, you'll get another one to 50 by using this system and paying a small gold fee. Crafting in Lost Ark doesn't actually work the way you think it might, mostly because it is not a profession or life skill of your own. Instead, crafting outside of your stronghold is done primarily through Craftsmen NPCs. You can find those NPCs in major cities but also in smaller settlements, but this essentially works as normal crafting, as the only difference is that instead of doing it yourself, the NPC will do it for you, requiring from you the materials and recipe needed for the craft, which are usually obtained from set life skills or collectible content. An example of a craftsman is the ship parts builder, which will grant you ship materials in exchange for mining and logging resources, which are required for ship upgrades mentioned earlier. In the case of cooking, most of the materials will come from hunting, and bringing those gathered meats to a cook will allow him to make you a dish which will act as a food buff that grants you additional combat stats. Those are usually lost upon death, so use them wisely. You can even buy some limited dishes at a normal vendor which will act in a similar way. Cooks will also be able to create dishes that are adventurous Tome specialties and are required in order to reach 100% map completion, but we'll get back to that. Lastly, you will eventually be able to create food feasts in your stronghold, which will make you loved by fellow guildmates. That is because crafting a feast makes 10 servings at once, and consuming one grants you a hefty combat buff for 2 hours which will stay after death, but also stacks with regular food buffs. By having 10 servings, you can simply invite your guildies to feast with you in your stronghold before going out together to die in cruel fashion on various encounters. The map in World of Arkesia is vast, and moving around it can be done through multiple ways, so let's go over all of them. There are many regions within a continent in Arkesia, and in order to quickly travel from one place to another, you'll be mostly using Triports, which work a bit like Diablo or PoE waypoints. Touching a previously undiscovered triport will allow you to teleport to it in the future by simply opening your map and clicking on the desired triport, which will cost you an extremely small silver fee, which actually becomes free if you have a crystalline or a sub buff active. Just make sure to always click on those undiscovered triports along your adventures. The reason I said regions is because you cannot triport teleport to another continent. You can, however, teleport to your present continent's dock, then use the triport teleport feature on the dock to get quickly to another previously discovered dock. This leads us to the second method, being sailing, which was previously covered, so I'll only add one thing to this topic. You will indeed have to sail across the seas first to a new port before you can quickly triport to it. Sailing will be your primary way of doing sea and island content, which will have you start from any continent's dock. Songs will have your character play a song on his instrument of choice, quite literally actually, as each class has their own instrument. Those will act like some form of teleportation scroll, however they have more to them than meets the eye. Over the course of your adventures, you'll be learning various songs. Some will allow you to quickly go out of dungeons, teleport to your stronghold, your city, or your training grounds, while others will vary, such as Rapport affinity actions, which will allow you to play up to 5 songs per day to Rapport NPC in order to gain Rapport points with them, something you should definitely be doing in your daily routines if available. Songs will also be part of your endgame adventures, as unlocking certain harder to obtain songs will allow you to gain access to hidden or special content once you've managed to master that fine tune, which I felt like was something similar to the old school Pokemon location block system, and I say that with joy, as moving that Snorlax out of your way was always a cool moment. I will have a link in the video description of where you'll find all songs. Lastly, we'll have the Bifrost, which will act as your second base recall or Hearthstone from World of Warcraft, as the first one will be granted to you through a song. You can simply open up your Bifrost UI and save your current location as your Bifrost point. As you may see in the UI, you'll be able to unlock 2 additional Bifrost points through Bifrost keys, one of which is granted to you at your account level 60, which isn't much actually, while the other is a reward for 9 Ignea Tokens, which is definitely something that won't be achievable in a month. You will also be able to get 2 more with the Crystalline Aura benefit, which is probably the single best benefit of that blue gem aura, which we'll get back to near the end of the video. All Bifrost locations have their own separate cooldown of 2 hours, lowered to 1 hour with the aura. Additionally, they cost a very small amount of silver per use, but are definitely the most effective way to move from continent to continent. The guild system in Lost Ark, while fairly complex and extensive, is honestly great and plays a key part in your Lost Ark day-to-day gameplay, as it offers way more than just being part of a friend's group, so I highly advise you to join a guild as soon as possible in order to have the best Lost Ark experience. You start by creating or joining a guild, which you can do almost immediately in the guild interface. Creating a guild will cost you 2000 silver, while joining one will grant you a newbie status for 3 days, which will limit your guild activities possibilities. A guild, like most progress systems in Lost Ark, will also have levels, and leveling it up, which is done by having members participate and complete guild content, will unlock more guild features alongside getting better rewards as a guild. So let's dive in. First things first are guild donations. As members of a guild, you will be contributing silver, gold, or a special rare shop item in order to gain personal contribution points, guild treasury currency, as well as Silmail bloodstones, which is a guild currency that you will be able to exchange for many useful character materials. Every week you'll receive a guild payout that will reward you and other members with currency based on how much you've contributed to the guild. The payout will be split between members and the guild treasury according to the guildmaster's will, as he'll be the one setting it up. The GM can also set up a minimal contribution requirement for payout, meaning that you need to reach a certain threshold if you want to be eligible for a payout. Beware of potential tyrants that might keep a bit too much for the treasury. Next up are guild quests, which the GM can pick from a variety of choices for him and his members to accomplish. Make sure to pick something of value for your team, as those quests cannot be changed after being chosen in one weekly reset. As an example, don't pick a PvP quest if nobody in your guild does PvP. The GM will also have to select which research or guild upgrades he wants to pursue, the better ones requiring a higher guild level. Those research usually last for a couple of days, however can be shortened by members doing activities. They usually cost guild treasury currency to start and upgrade your guild with various benefits, from better rewards at your guild shop to guild battle abilities that higher ranked members can use and organized guild content. It is important to note that a level 1 guild can only have a maximum of 30 members, however this can increase up to 100 at higher levels. Every weekly reset, the guild leader can reserve one of the many GVG islands to contest. This choice should be based on several factors, because each island has a different objective, gear limitation, and minimum required participants. The higher the rank of the island, the more min-max the participants need to be in order to get a good placement. Depending on the island you're at, as they all have different rules of combat and competition, this is the moment where actual guild versus guild PvP combat can happen between two guilds. And knowing that this PvP is not equalized, so contrary to the arenas, here you get the full benefit of your character's outdoor power. Higher rank islands like the S rank ones have much better rewards than the lower ranked islands. Just keep in mind that picking an island to contest costs a small amount of Silmail bloodstones, which gets deducted from the guild storage. If your server has high competition, it might be best to avoid going into the higher rank islands and just try to get a good rank in a lower ranked one instead. The Guild War is held once per week at a fixed time and consists of multiple rounds which decide the final placement. The placement and the rank of the island dictates what rewards the guild earns at weekly reset and can be extremely lucrative, as getting first place can reward the guild with up to 100,000 gold, which can then be distributed amongst members. Getting first place on one of the 2 rank S islands unlocks a special feature for the guild leader. This will allow him to host a server-wide event for all players that will award participants with upgrade materials. So time to get social and famous with your server. The guild hosting the event earns additional gold based on the amount of participants that showed up, so make sure you are loved by your community and avoid hosting it at 4 AM so that more players can come for even more rewards. Similar to reserving a GVG island, the guild leader must reserve an island for GVE too. Each island is separated into specific tiers based on gear requirements, maximum allowed participants, and unique field boss or world boss monster you must slay. Once a GVE event is registered by the guild leader, the guild has 2 attempts to get the fastest clear time possible. Guilds with the lower clear time will be ranked higher. A major difference between this and GVG is that you can do it at any day and any time you want. So grab your friends if you're up for it and head out to the seas. If you are a potential guild leader and want to find out more details about guild management and detailed guild features, check out Tea Party's guild system overview, as it covers the topic extensively. You'll find a link in the video description. The Adventurer's Tome is going to be something akin to an in-game summary of endgame content and activities you can do. This is most definitely something completionists will love, as your goal is to complete 100% of certain regions. With each 10% of completion of a map you do, you'll get various useful rewards, with the later stages granting you much better things, up until 100%. At that point you will be rewarded with an Ignea token, probably the hardest but most valuable collectible you can obtain. This is a goal you should definitely try to go for, so I recommend picking a region of your choice early on, then consistently try to push it to 100% before moving over to the next one. In order to finish a region, you'll need to complete side quests, drop monster parts from certain spots which are also resellable on the auction house, check out all Vistas, which are small hidden viewpoints, obtain all cooking recipes and much more, so I guarantee you'll have plenty of things to do. If you have trouble finding what you seek, you can check out Papunika's website, which covers all Adventurer's Tome's details extensively. The link will be in the video description. Collectibles go hand in hand with the Adventurer's Tome, as they are for the most part required in order to reach 100% map completion. The difference is that instead of being limited to one region, they're categorized per type of content and are game-wide, meaning that they'll be obtainable throughout the entire game from a whole variety of ways. For a fresh account, the general recommendation is to first try to prioritize getting the first 6 giant hearts and 20 island tokens while trying to get 1 Ignea token, as they all give out valuable rewards. As mentioned before, Ignea Tokens are rewards for achieving 100% Adventurous Tome completion of a region. Completing the Adventurous Tome will be very hard and time-consuming early on, and is honestly something you should only work towards when it suits you, rather than go out of your way to just try and do map completion as fast as possible. The main reason for that is that obtaining the last missing percent is usually tied to having all Rapport NPCs maxed out in a region, which is usually a very lengthy process. Make sure to at least do your daily Rapport actions in your chosen progress region, as those are limited to 5 or 6 with the crystal and aura per day. The NPCs for Ignea Tokens can be found in any major city. Giant hearts come from a number of different sources, from quest rewards to boss drops and Rapport rewards. Aside from the first 6 giant hearts, which are recommended to obtain sooner than later, the rest should be collected over time. The NPC for turning in rewards is located on the Wisdom Isle. For more detailed information on where to find them all, check out maxroll.gg Giants Hearts page. Mokoko Seeds are, for lack of a better term, green potato thingies that you can pick up from various semi-hidden spots on the ground. While not very important and found in most places in the game, you can and should still try to collect them eventually, as there are some decent rewards after having more than 1,000 of them. This includes a good sailor contract or legendary ship skin, amongst other things. The NPC for turning in rewards is located in the Mokoko village in Tortoik. For a cheat sheet of all Mokoko Seeds locations, as you'll definitely need it, because map which covers this topic in great detail. Masterpieces are rewards that come from progressing through other long-term collectible content and stages, such as having 50% map completion or obtaining 9 giant hearts. Most people go for masterpieces solely for the Sunflower Island token, which is obtainable at 10 masterpieces, as later stages become harder to obtain but most specifically do not offer great rewards with the exception of gold chests. For a detailed list on where to find all masterpieces, check out Maxroll's written summary. Island tokens or island hearts are a type of collectible that you can earn from more or less completing an island and its activities. This will have you sail from island to island and complete numerous objectives you may find there. With token rewards sometimes being RNG, most of your rewards will happen organically over time, as other activities will send you towards them, such as UNA tasks, guild content, and most specifically your Adventure Island daily, which we'll talk about later. Having said that, the first 20 tokens will reward you with 2 valuable rewards, being a +6 skill potion and an upgradable compass, which is one of your 3 special endgame character equipment, which will grant you bonuses to see content, but we'll get back to that later. As a fresh character on a fresh account, it will definitely be worth checking out rewarding islands early on, as they will grant you with lots of upgrade materials and engraving books, allowing you to get a nice early gear and silver boost. Make sure to target those if possible. I'll have the island's name shown on screen so that you can pause the video or save it for later if you want. Lastly, island tokens you may gain are not added to your collectibles tab right away, but to your inventory instead. In order to turn it in, you'll need to give them as a tribute to the statue of Gienna, the goddess of the sea and patroness of brave sailors. You'll find her on Ophir, the lonely island, and you can just turn them all in one go at either 15 or 20. If you want a quick and easy write-up of those first 20 easily obtainable island tokens, check out Maxroll's guide as well as their island search tool, because it is fantastic. Both links will be in the video description. Whenever you acquire a secret map, you're essentially receiving a treasure map. Those can be obtained from almost anywhere, from RNG drops to rewards from all types of content. Once you click on it, a map will show you a hint of where you can find the adventure in the open sea or a region if it's on the ground. And once you have successfully located the adventure, you may encounter a cutscene or nothing at all actually. You'll find no sea bounty reward in there per se, as the collectible itself is rather obtained from those map completions. Most secret maps are time-gated and cannot be grinded, and adding to that, sea bounties collectible rewards are not particularly great. Having said that, in a later patch, judging by the Korean client, it will still be relevant, as good things will come to those that manage to get above 40 bounties. So it's still a good idea to actually engage in that content when given the chance. Honestly, the best part about this is definitely the fact that the NPC for those rewards is located on Peto, which is basically Lost Ark's version of Titanic.
Jack, come back, come back. No.
Ward tree leaves are collected by doing life skill activities in the open world. A higher life skill level gives you a higher chance to obtain a leaf. They will randomly appear whenever you forage, mine, log, hunt, fish or excavate. Currently, there are 10 ward tree leaves per life skill skull, for a total of 60, with more coming in a future patch. This also means that if you want to get them all, you'll have to actually use all of your life skills. However, they do not offer any super valuable character progress reward. That is of course with the exception of the transformation spell, which allows you to turn into a pink rabbit. Omnium Stars are the last collectible you'll encounter, as they are only introduced once you reach Punica, which is tier 3 content, as well as finish the main quest there. Doing so will reward you with 1 Omnium Star, and since there's very few stars available, each one you manage to obtain will be exchanged for very powerful rewards, such as legendary grade skill runes. There is no general type of content in which you can find Omnium Stars, and instead they will be rewarded to you from a variety of rather hard to get content. You can find their exact sources in your collectibles tab by mousing over each star. Chaos Dungeons become available shortly after reaching level 50 and are one of Lost Ark's key daily features. It's a place to test your skills and abilities against an almost never-ending horde of monsters, elites and bosses, while at the same time being rewarded with good loot from it. Those Chaos Dungeons are not supposed to be super complicated, but instead are quick 5-minute runs that have you destroying big waves of monsters in all kinds of ways. Reaching a higher item level threshold will allow you to enter the next tier of Chaos Dungeon, thus offering better rewards but getting harder as a result. While in the run, you also have a chance to spawn a portal, either gold or purple, similar to Diablo Goblin portals. Getting into them will have you fight additional special enemies, giving you even more loot and most specifically additional gold. Each day, you'll be granted 100 points of Aura of Resonance. This is a system that allows for 2 entries per day, as each entry to a Chaos Dungeon consumes 50 points and thus giving you full benefit of your daily Chaos run. There's also a rest system in place if you're not using this Aura points per day, but I'll cover that later. Once you're out of Aura points, it is not super valuable to keep doing them. However, it's still something worth doing in early launch. Doing Chaos runs without your Aura points can be seen as an infinite dungeon, as monsters will now start dropping a new type of currency in the form of Perception Shards and Disorder Crystals on top of other drops, but at a vastly reduced rate. The reason this is beneficial in your early progress is because next to the Chaos Dungeon entrance in any city, you'll find an NPC which will allow you to exchange this infinite mode currency for engravings amongst other things. And those are definitely things you'll be needing in the very start of your endgame progress, but we'll get back to those later as well. Guardian Raids are going to be your first mini-raid experience in Lost Ark, which will have you fight a boss that will test your combat prowess and game knowledge that you have acquired thus far. While it is possible to do them on your own, it is advised to go with a full party of 4, as the content scales to your party size. However, having access to more counter skills makes some Guardians much easier. Guardian Raids share 3 similarities with Chaos Dungeons. In order to queue for a Guardian Raid, you'll need to interact with the raid board in a major city, similar to how you enter Chaos Dungeons. And just like those, they offer you the same Aura of Resonance system, which in this case is called Guardian Souls, allowing you to harvest 2 Guardian Souls per day. Similar to the Aura, this can also stack up to a rest bonus, which can potentially grant you double rewards, but I'll cover that later. The difference between those two is that while you will face more powerful Guardians the higher your item level will be, they do not share the same loot table, so sometimes it might be worth for you to do an easier Guardian, as you might be after that boss's loot instead of a harder one. Only 2 Guardians can be slayed each day, so choose wisely based on what rewards you're after. Contrary to the infinite Chaos runs, kills after the first 2 reward you with almost nothing, so you should definitely stop there. Before you zone out through a song from a successful encounter, make sure to harvest a Guardian Soul for loot, as not doing so can leave you with no loot and a consumed soul, regardless whether or not you have harvested it. Additionally, failing to clear a Guardian does not consume your daily Guardian Soul limit nor its rest bonus, so don't fear about it. Once you enter a Guardian raid, you'll first need to locate the Guardian as he's moving around the zone, which will be done with the use of flares. Those can be crafted at an NPC alchemist in Major City. The common unwritten rule for non-premade groups is that it is expected of the first player of the party to use his flare first, followed by the second and third if necessary. Make sure to try and come as prepared as you can be, as while you're allowed to wipe, doing so can result in wasted gold or resources, which you'll definitely have very little of early on. Guardian raids have their own tiers or stages if you prefer, with 4 bosses per stage. The Western release is expected to have Guardians available up to Volganos, with the last boss of the stage 5 raids, which is considered early tier 3 content and requires an item level of 1385 to attempt. Guardian raids can also come with a rotating weekly challenge mode in which your gear is normalized, limiting some of your gear bonuses such as tripod levels or cards, making this a harder encounter. However, it is unclear whether this will release in the Western launch. For full guides on Guardians, you should check out Papunica's page, which has all bosses covered for the Western release. The link will be in the video description. The Procyon's Eye Compass events consist of 4 limited time events in Lost Ark which you can choose to participate in as part of your endgame activities by interacting with the compass icon near your minimap. This includes Chaos Gates, Adventure Islands, Ghost Ships and Field Bosses. These events provide a variety of rewards and collectible progression. They take place at set times and are limited to 1 entry each time for your entire account roster, meaning that you cannot complete it on an alt character the same day. You can also keep track of upcoming events by having a look at your in-game calendar, which will have all events with their appropriate start time listed. You can even track all ongoing event times as well as set reminders to them under the notification tab on the left of your screen. Here's a few things you should know about those events. Failing or leaving an event before its completion will result in no rewards for you. While you can technically attend those events an unlimited amount of times, the rewards will only be received once per day, or in the case of the Ghost Ship, once per week. Not all events are present each day, as well as not all rewards are the same. Make sure to always go after the ones that seem the most valuable to you at the time. Lastly, make sure to be on time, as you won't be able to participate if you're more than 3 minutes late. Every major continent in Lost Ark has a unique field boss spawn. They all have a requirement in your adventurer's tome, with some dropping specific collectibles or food items. You can only obtain rewards from a single field boss per day, so choose wisely. If your chat is going wild with messages about the field boss spawn but you don't seem to see it, try changing your map channel, which is located near your minimap. Those act as different layers of the same map in case of too many players being present, which is definitely something you'll be seeing in early launch. Chaos Gates are a 30-player instant dungeon that can be attended daily except on Wednesdays because reasons. They basically act like a massive chaos dungeon where a huge group of players join together and murder monsters for some special loot, which is everyone's favorite activity. Clearing this place will reward you with potential cards or even a frenzy rune, but most importantly with a random rarity secret map, which is a key Chaos Gate feature. Secret maps obtained here can be completed with a party of 4, as your map objective and location can be shared. A common thing to see is players linking their map rarity in chat after clearing a gate, then grouping together with the same map rarity so that they get 4 times the rewards, as they'll do 4 of them for the value of 1. The Ghost Ship event takes place only 3 times a week in Procyon's Ocean's Deadly Waters. However, rewards can only be obtained once per week. Upon entering the Ghost Ship, you, alongside other adventurers, will have to take on a Ghost Pirate. Dying here without owning a Feather of Resurrection locks you out of receiving the rewards, since there are no regular respawns available. It is highly recommended to do this event as a party, as the more you contribute to the event with your group, the higher the rewards will be. Adventure Islands are usually available each day and even twice on the weekend. This event provides players the option to attend one of 3 random timed Adventure Islands of their choice. Each of these hosts different rewards ranging from gold, silver, pirate coins and other card packs, so it's up to you to decide which of those rewards suit you the most. Completing them gives you a chance to obtain the island token of that given island, as well as any other island related rare drop. Una tasks are basically daily and weekly quests that you can complete for various NPCs and comes with its own UI panel. They offer you the possibility of picking the ones you might want to complete, whether it's because you want to do that specific content or just because you prefer that specific reward. Make sure to always pick what you're after the most, although it is recommended to do the ones that give leap stones on your main character. You can do a maximum of 3 daily Una tasks as well as 3 Una weeklies, so pick your choices as you are limited. Completing Una tasks will additionally grant you Una reputation with the appropriate quest giver, which is a reputation system within Una Dailies that isn't tied to the Rapport system. Each time you complete quests for certain NPCs, your reputation with them will increase. Eventually, this will allow you to either unlock more quests for more rewards or grant you certain hard-to-obtain collectible items which are required for 100% map completion. As you can see, the adventure and questing food chain is vast in Arkesia. Since your Una reputation is account-wide, but you are limited to 3 dailies per day, this is where getting alts to do those as well can become increasingly more beneficial, as you will be able to gather Una reputation much faster. Additionally, there is kind of a weekly payout system in place tied to Unas, which you'll see on the left side of your UI. Each Una task you complete will be added onto the Una token counter, with dailies granting you 3 points while weeklies giving you 12. However, you cannot gain more than 18 points per day just from dailies, while weeklies are uncapped. You can actually claim your payout reward ahead of the weekly reset if you've kept it out at 70 points, while the payout itself is basically a big bag of RNG gold. Its value can range anywhere from 200 to 2000 gold, so you can hit quite the jackpot. In Lost Ark, there is actually a rest system for some of the daily and weekly lockout based systems, and here's how it works. At the daily reset, every skipped Chaos Dungeon or Guardian raid adds 10 points to your rest bonus bar, as those are calculated with the formula of 1 missed daily run equals 10 rest points, meaning that skipping an entire day will grant you 20 rest points. You can accumulate up to a maximum of 100 points, and every 20 points of rest you have will grant you bonus loot for the next run you do. You can however still only do each activity twice per day for Chaos and Guardians, as this rest system enhances the Aura of Resonance and Guardian Soul system instead of the content itself. In the case of Una Dailies, as it works for them as well, it is 3, as you can do up to 3 Una Dailies per day. This means that even if you max out on 5 times double rewards for daily content, it will still take you 2.5 days to claim them. A lot of daily events do not have this rest bonus, such as the Compass activities like Adventure Islands or World Bosses, meaning that sometimes if you're short on time, it might be beneficial to skip a Chaos or a Guardian raid and instead just do something else. The next time you log in, you'll just do a run with those bonus rewards.
Before time began, there was the Cube.
Sorry, wrong movie. The Cube Dungeon is another in-game activity you'll be doing. However, it requires Cube entry tickets in order to enter, which you'll usually obtain from your daily Chaos Dungeons, with higher tier Chaos runs giving out higher tier Cube tickets. Just like with Guardian raids, you can do it solo, but it's highly advised to do it as an organized group, and let me tell you why. Contrary to the misleading intro, the Cube is potentially inspired from the movie The Cube, which featured an endless path towards cube-shaped rooms filled with different traps in them. Similarly here, you and your party will have to move through a maze of square-shaped rooms which will have different dangers in each room depending on the color of the portal before entering the next room. Orange will be for bosses, blue will have you dodge deadly traps that might kill you instantly if you fail, purple will have elite monsters, white will be a normal room with normal monsters, and lastly, gold is a lucky bonus floor in which you'll find additional treasures such as engraving books. Regardless of the room type you're in, you will be given one random effect per floor, which can be either positive or negative. So be aware of your current buff or debuff, as this can either help or break your attempt. You will see them displayed in the top right corner of your screen. Your goal is to go through as many rooms as possible, while gathering as many points as possible. You are given a timer for each floor, but if the time runs out, it's not over yet. At that point, ghosts will start spawning to prevent you from clearing the floor by inflicting massive amounts of damage. Avoid these at any cost while clearing the remaining monsters. If you're successful, you can still progress further. The more score you have, the better your end reward will be, with the max chest being diamond after about 17 rooms. Points toward your chest reward are based on your clear speed and survivor count, so clearing these as fast as you can while keeping everyone alive is the objective. If you or your party members die, but the floor is still clear by the remaining players, everyone gets revived with 25% HP. This also means that if your entire party dies, your run will be ended early and will grant you a reward based on the last rewards checkpoint you have achieved. This is why going in alone or in a non-organized group might result in getting little to no rewards, so make sure to stay on your toes. It is also possible to use 3 entry tickets instead of 1 for triple the rewards, but at the same time, triple the risk. The Tower of Shadow is yet another activity which you can do at the end game, which will have you climb 50 increasingly harder floors on your own. You'll start on floor 1 with an item level requirement of 302 and progress your way up, as you can't skip floors you haven't done yet. Every 5 floors, the required item level to go into the floor will increase, but upon failing a floor, you can choose to try again or exit. In the tower, you'll find all sorts of solo encounters, from killing bosses to elites and monsters to survival rooms. The tower entrance can be found in all major cities on the map, and just like in case of the cube, skills and items cannot be changed once you enter, so double check everything and make sure you're ready before going in. There's a thing you should know however about the rewards of the tower, as contrary to other contents in the game, this is a one-time activity. The first character you clear the tower with will obtain special roster or account-wide items. For all consecutive characters, the rewards are replaced with upgrade materials with various gear enhancements, and there are 2 ways to go about this. You can either clear the tower on your alt character first, which will let your main character reap the benefits of extra upgrade materials, or vice versa. You should choose depending on which character you would like to focus on, as both are valid options. Starting with tier 2 content, which is at about 800 item level, another activity you'll be doing will be a mode called Boss Rush, but can also be called Corridors. Here, you'll face wave after wave of bosses, and the more you manage to defeat, the better your rewards will be, which should cap out at wave number 15. Just like with the Cube Dungeon, you'll need tickets to enter this content, which you'll find in Chaos Dungeons or Solmeo Bloodstone shop, which is the guild currency shop. A valuable reward that you can obtain from this mode are gems and card experience, both of which we'll cover later. Abyssal Dungeons are going to be your go-to MMO dungeon experience with a weekly lockout for each of them. They will require you to gather a full party in order to complete them with the recommended aforementioned 3 DPS 1 support group composition. Just like with most of Lost Ark's endgame content, in order to unlock harder and higher tier content, you'll need to get a higher item level, and in order to do that, you're more than likely going to have to go through Abyssal Dungeons as it is a core endgame experience. You can queue for those in any major city at the proper summoning stone, if I can call it like that, and doing them can be either done by a preformed group or by using the matchmaking system. Starting at item level 340, for your first normal Abyssal Dungeon, there'll be a source of very good loot varying from guaranteed class engraving accessories and legendary cards to special materials which will allow you to craft your very own set items. I'll talk more about those later. Those dungeons also offer the possibility of a harder mode, assuming you can queue for it, as it requires a higher item level. Keep in mind however that you can only do one of those modes per weekly reset, so make sure to do the one you prefer. Once you've managed to defeat the final boss, at the end of each successful dungeon you'll see 3 things. The first is the final score screen, which will allow you to measure your performance compared to other members of your party. The second is going to be the possibility to outbid your fellow party members for an additional loot cache, and this is going to be a GDKP system, meaning that the winner of the bid's gold will be distributed amongst the other party members. While the third is going to be the possibility of getting bonus rewards if you decide to pay gold for it. This used to be blue gems in the closed beta, but should be now changed to gold for the Western release. If you're after the loot table of this specific dungeon, it's always worth paying the price. Lastly, just like with Garden Raids, there is a feature of a rotating every 2 weeks challenge mode Abyssal Dungeon, which may or may not be present at the Western launch. This should become available once you've arrived to mid-tier 2 content, which is at about 960 item level, and just like with Challenge Guardians, will have most of your character's enhancement not work with the exception of engravings. This will result in the dungeon being quite a bit harder. Voyage Sea missions are scheduled cooperative missions that you can find outside of most major ports. There, players can gather together to do short minigames in order to earn pirate coins and other special sea coins. Because those voyage missions require you to be able to use your boat's functions, make sure you select the most suited ship for the job from your collection. These special co-op currencies can be used to get more pirate coins, sailors, ship upgrade materials and more. There's also a chance to obtain special keys while doing an event which can be used to visit gateway maps, which is yet another sea minigame. Those will be open in the sea at certain precise times and are usually worth doing as there's a chance to obtain quite a bit of gold. When you start sailing on the seas, once you get near some islands, they may ask you for a few pirate coins to be unlocked. This is actually kind of a bait, as they would just allow you to repair your ship there instead of traveling to the nearest port. The exception to that is that when you're in the process of a co-op mission and your durability is nearing 0, at that point it might be a saving grace, as sinking in the seas won't let you finish your mission, so in that desperate time, it's probably a good investment to make. If you want to see an overview of the sea minigames, check out Wilkie's Marine Event Guide, which covers this topic extensively. Wandering merchants are only available at certain times and locations to sell mostly exclusive items. Some of those items are quite valuable as they can vary from rare recipes required for the adventurous tome completion or rare valuable cards, which makes finding these merchants become pretty important in the very end game, as they'll be able to sell you some of the very best cards the game has to offer. There are actually 2 types of wandering merchants, as they can appear as both NPCs and trade ships near islands, and with their spawn being both random and RNG, however they do have set locations, your best bet is to group up with friends and split up at each potential spawn location to try and notify your crew of its possible spawn. That way everybody has time to get to him. I'll leave a link in the video description of all available merchants and their potential spawn points. Cards are collectible items based off of Arkesia's many characters that you can obtain by doing a wide variety of content, from guaranteed rapport or quest rewards to specific Abyssal Dungeon drops or wandering merchants. With each card you collect, they provide an increasing but still rather small stat bonuses for your entire roster. Cards, however, have a second usage in the very end game, as aside from just adding them to your collection, they are part of a deck system, which means that once you obtain the right cards, they can and will form a set of cards which will grant your character bonuses based on the card set you have equipped. You can equip up to 6 cards at a time, with set bonuses generally activating at either 2, 3, 4 or 6 cards, and with them being fully interchangeable, you can mix and match various sets if you'd like. Card sets become valuable in the very end game as they allow you to gain bonuses to stats that aren't obtainable in any other way. There are many cards to obtain in the game, but your collection space is limited. This means that you might have to eventually expand your card collection capacity with gold in order to complete it all. If you happen to be out of space in your card collection, you can keep excess cards in your warehouse in the meantime. Another type of obtainable cards are experience cards such as creation fragments, which once used will add card experience into your so-called card experience bank. This will in turn allow you to level the cards of your choice by allocating those experience points. While cards offer mostly defensive bonuses such as reduced damage taken from a certain magical element, which can be particularly handy when facing specific boss encounters, the very best and very late game sets can grant you minor offensive bonuses as well. But this usually requires card sets to be awakened, or in other words, leveled, which is usually a very lengthy and expensive process. In order to awaken a card, you'll first need to feed it experience from your stored card experience bank, which has an additional silver cost attached to it. Once you have maxed out the XP required, you must use duplicates of the same base card in order to awaken it. The number of duplicates needed, as well as the required experience, increases with each awakening stage. This means that since cards can be awakened up to 5 times each, a fully awakened card actually requires you a total of 15 extra copies of that card. So now you understand why it's not something you'll get easily. With sets consisting of 6 cards, the bonuses that require an awakening total level of 30 means that all cards from that set are maxed out. And before you ask me about the best cards and sets to farm, the Saint Guild has got you covered, as they've made a very nice infographic about sets and cards that are generally considered to be good to pursue. As usual, I leave a link in the video description. When you open up your character sheet, you'll see 2 main categories of stats. Basic stats are simply made up of your general attack power and your max HP, while combat stats consist of crit, specialization, domination, swiftness, endurance, and expertise. Each of these traits display an aggregated value of different stats. For example, max HP derives its value from vitality and HP potency stats, so let's have a quick look. Attack power will increase the overall damage of your character. Max HP will increase your character's health points, which is also a boost to support healing spells, as they usually scale off of your max HP. Crit will increase your probability of performing a critical hit, but does not increase critical hit damage. Domination will increase your damage to staggered or impaired targets, something that can be pretty handy in PvP. Swiftness is a versatile and powerful stat, as it increases both attack and casting speed, movement speed, as well as decreases skill cooldowns, which makes this the go-to PvP stat for most. Endurance boosts your overall defensive stats, allowing your character to take less damage from hits. Additionally, it increases the value of healing and shield spells. Expertise increases the duration of negative effects applied to enemies such as debuffs, as well as reduce their duration on yourself, but due to the way it scales and losing out on other stats, it is considered to be a pretty weak stat in general. Specialization is where it gets tricky. This varies depending on the class you play, but in general it boosts your character's special traits as well as awakening skill damage. In case of the Paladin, it increases the effectiveness of his holy aura, while for the Shadow Hunter it increases the overall effectiveness of demon form skills and resource generation. You can see on screen the detailed specialization stats for all classes, so feel free to pause the video if you want to check them all out. Stat potions work in a very similar way to skill potions, making them essentially one-time rewards that affect your entire roster. A lot of them can be found by doing side quests in different regions as well as collectible rewards, and since it's easy to get lost with all those sources, my best tip is to find and search the ones you're missing by using the item codex, which is the next topic of the video. The item codex is basically why database websites in Lost Ark aren't as effective as they would be in other games. It is the ultimate game journal database, which is equipped with very powerful tools that can even show you the required amount of materials for certain levels of gear upgrades. Whatever item you might ever search for in the game can most likely be found in the item codex. In the case of the previous topic being stat potions, this journal will make it easy for you by tracking your current progress and showing all remaining potions that you can still obtain and where you can find them. Item rarities are surely something that most MMORPG players know all about. However, in Lost Ark, things get a bit crazy, so let me guide you through them. After arriving at max level, each item will have a tier, a rarity, and a quality score, knowing that accessories do not have an upgradable item level of their own, but we'll cover that later. Tiers are mostly tied to item levels, as after reaching a certain item level threshold, you will start seeing items with a higher tier, and to keep things simple, should be considered like items from a new expansion pack, making most tier 2 items in general vastly superior to tier 1. Tier 1 gear starts at 302 item level, with tier 2 at 802 and tier 3 at 1k1. A higher tiered item will have way more base stats such as dexterity and vitality. It is usually recommended to swap into the next tier of gear as soon as possible. Rarities will start at Uncommon and go up to Relic for the Western release. However, once we will be able to delve deeper into Tier 3 content, it will be possible to go beyond Relic Rarity, which will be Ancient, and lastly Esther, which is considered to be almost unobtainable in the current Korean patch. Rarities will usually impact the amount of tripods an armor can have or engraving points in the case of accessories. The basic general formula is that an item's strength derives from tier or item level first, followed by rarity, then lastly quality. This may not always be the case, but we'll dive into more details in a second. Engravings, aside from being mentioned probably way too many times already in this video, are a complex system at first glance, but are basically your build-defining talents which are obtained and gained by combining 3 different aspects of character and gear progression. Those are notably engraving books, accessories, and ability stones. I will now try my best at explaining how this works in an easy as possible manner. Whenever you open your character page, you'll notice an engraving tab. In here, you'll see all the currently active engravings your character has, which will range from level 1 to 3. There are 2 types of engravings. Normal engravings, which are colored blue and are your positive talent effects, and malus engravings, which are colored red and give you negative status effects such as decreased attack speed, making this a kiss curse system. Normal engravings can be further divided into 2 categories, class engravings and general combat engravings. Class engravings are unique to your class and are usually build defining, such as the Deadeye's Pistolier, which forces him to only play with pistols instead of swapping weapons, while combat engravings are general combat bonuses such as increased front attack damage or increased number of awakening charges. Hopefully you're still following what I'm saying. The blue and red gems you see are engraving points which are given to me through my currently equipped accessories, which are rings, earrings, the necklace, and the ability stone, which can be seen on the right side of the UI. Those are all equipable items that you drop while playing the game, that on top of having combat stats will also come with engraving points, but we'll get back to that later. Now you can notice that those engravings, while they do have blue or red crystals in them, are grayed out. This is because in order to activate an engraving at level 1, you must at least accumulate 5 blue crystals or 5 blue engraving points of that specific engraving. So let's run a quick simulation. Having 3 engraving points has no effect at all. 5 points will grant you this engraving at level 1. 7 engraving points will still only be level 1, as it will only reach level 2 once you've reached at least 10 points. The maximum engraving level is 3 and is reached at 15 engraving points. Getting more than 15 points has no effect on the engraving and is just pointless. Assuming you're still with me, now you hopefully have a basic understanding of how this point system works, as your goal is to obtain as many normal level 3 engravings as possible, which is 15 points, while never reaching 5 points in any malus engravings. That way you will never have any negative status effects applied to your character. There is still, however, a third way to get engraving points aside from gear, which is by equipping engraving points onto your character itself, so let's move on to that topic. As you might have noticed previously, on your character sheet, there are 2 available empty slots that you can fill. This will be done through the usage of engraving books, and this is how they work. Engraving books are very valuable item drops which you'll obtain from doing endgame content of all kind. Those books come in 4 tiers of rarities, from uncommon to legendary, and a very good source for your first 20 green and rare books on your account can be obtained from the Infinite Chaos Dungeon vendor. In order to unlock the possibility of applying specific engraving points to your character, you'll need to first read or use 20 uncommon engraving books of that specific engraving. Doing so will then unlock the possibility of applying 3 engraving points onto one of your character's engraving slots, knowing that you can slot the second one as well with the same point for a total of plus 6 points if you wish. This book unlock system you're doing is a one-time account-wide thing, meaning that once you have read 20 books of an engraving, it will become available for your alts as well, assuming they can or want to use it. You should try to think ahead of what kind of engraving books you'd like to go after, so that it might be beneficial for your potential alts too. After having read 20 green books, you can then proceed to searching for 20 blue rare books of that engraving, as you cannot just skip rarity tiers and you'll need to go through all of them. After having read 20 blue books, your engraving of choice will now grant 6 points instead of 3. By that logic, you'll then have to get 20 epic books for plus 9, then finally 20 legendary books for plus 12. The higher tier your accessories, ability stones and book engravings will be, the more additional engraving points you'll have. Combining these 3 methods of obtaining engraving points by proper mix and matching your gear should result in a very geared endgame character to have as much as 5 level 3 engravings active at a time. Keep in mind, however, that the ability stone cannot roll with any class engraving points and only with general combat ones. Accessories are basically gear in the form of equipable jewelry, which consists of 2 rings, 2 earrings, and a necklace. Here's a few things that you should know about this type of gear. Accessories do not have their own upgradable item level, so to speak, but rather an item level preset which at the same time requires your character's armor to have a certain item level in order to be equipped. This means that you cannot equip a tier 3 ring if your gear is still mostly tier 1. Their stats derive from 3 sources, with each affecting the item in a different way. The tier and item level bracket of the item will for the most part only impact the amount of basic stats it provides. The rarity will increase the amount of maximum engraving points an item can have, while the quality will affect the amount of additional combat stats it can provide on all levels. This means that you could in theory have the same amount of combat stats on a tier 1 legendary ring as you would on a tier 3 legendary ring of the same quality. However, by doing so, you would lose out on a lot of basic stats, so it's generally not a good idea unless you're trying out some specific movement speed stacking build. Ability stones play a big role in building your character, as a sizable amount of vitality and the majority of your general combat engraving points are provided by them. That is because, as mentioned in previous sections, ability stones cannot roll with any class engravings on them, nor do they have an item quality. Instead, they are filled with 2 general combat engravings and 1 negative malus one. The max amount of potential engraving points a stone can have is defined by the rarity of the stone, while its tier and minimum required item level will simply increase the amount of vitality on it. It isn't enough, however, to just drop and equip an ability stone, as every time you see one, it will be in an unpolished raw state, and will first need to be taken to a gem cutter or stone cutter in order to transform it into a usable item. Having said that, the engravings a given ability stone has will remain the same after being polished and made equipable, and since doing so costs you a bit of silver, you should first check if you're interested in those engravings. If you are, you'll proceed to cutting the gem. If not, you can probably sell it on the auction house if it has potential good engravings that just aren't for you, as they can be worth a lot of gold. Otherwise, you can just dismantle them just like any other gear that you feel is worthless. The NPC to cut your ability stones is found in all major cities as a blue diamond icon on the map. As mentioned before, you should first make sure you actually want to cut your stone and use it, as doing so will both bind it to you, making it untradeable on top of having a silver fee cost. Once you begin the cutting process, you'll be met with a new UI. Here, your goal is going to be similar to the general concept of engravings, which means you'll want to maximize getting as many normal engravings as possible, while at the same time having as little negative malus points as possible. You should start out by picking the engraving you care about the most out of the 2 normal ones. Your initial attempt will always have a 75% chance to succeed, so focus this attempt on your most desirable engraving by clicking on the hammer icon. If you manage to generate a point successfully, this will reduce the success rate of your next attempt by 10%, while failed attempts will instead raise it by 10% and leave a crackle or empty space in the process. This success rate can never go below 25% or exceed 75%. The general method and formula for this is to use your high success rate attempts on your most desired battle engravings, meaning at 75 and 65%. At 55%, you should go for your less desired engraving number 2, while low success rate attempts starting at 45 and below should go onto your malus stat, as the whole concept is to try and force as many malus crackles as possible, which will in turn allow for a higher success rate in getting engraving points. If you manage to do a fine cut, reaching a certain amount of successful blue engraving points will result in additional vitality on your stone as a reward for cutting it nicely, a bonus which can be seen on the bottom of the cutting UI. As usual, avoid reaching +5 points in your malus stat, and remember that even if you don't have 5 malus points on your stone, your other accessories might have a few points, so make sure you mix and match your gear and engravings accordingly so that you do not reach 5 malus points. Item quality varies in value depending on the type of item it affects, so let's dissect this. For weapons, quality is mostly not important until you reach higher tier 3 content. At that point, quality will be able to increase the overall damage of your weapon by as much as 15%, that is compared to a lower quality one of the same item level and rarity. Don't worry about that too much, however, as once that content arrives to the west, there will also be a system in place to upgrade a weapon's quality. Quality on armors isn't as important, but will still have a tiny added bonus to stats. For accessories, quality is very important as it will increase the amount of combat stat provided with a varying degree of influence in the following order: necklaces, followed by earrings, then lastly rings. This means that there is a huge combat stat disparity between a high quality necklace and a low quality necklace, while there won't be that big of a difference between a low quality ring and a high quality one. And as a reminder in the quality topic, ability stones do not have quality at all, as they do not grant additional combat stats. Once you arrive at tier 2 content, which starts at above 800 item level, you will start dropping gems. This is yet another layer of character power progression, which once obtained can be slotted into their own tab in your character sheet interface. They can only come in two variations. They either improve the damage of a specific skill or lower its cooldown. You cannot stack two identical gems for the same skill, meaning that if you want to buff a skill X, you can only buff it by using both skill X gems. When you first see them, they'll be tiny level 1 gems, and you can combine 3 of them into a level 2 gem. This process can be done easily through an auto gem filter in your inventory bag, which will automatically combine 3 lower tier gems into a higher one, up until a maximum of level 10. It is also possible for you to reroll a gem for a silver fee in order to attempt to get a skill you want. However, don't worry too much about rerolling them into the correct skills until they're at least level 4 or 5, since it is possible to use or buy another class's gem by simply rerolling it at the NPC for silver, which will make it into something for your class. The only real thing that matters is the level of the gem and the lowest price on the auction house it's currently going for. As a side note, since alts can drop non-bound gems from Chaos Dungeons and Boss Rush, this can be an excellent source of gold if you aren't using them yourself. Damage gems sharply increase at level 10, whereas cooldown gems do not. As a result, level 10 damage gems are usually worth way more than level 10 cooldown ones. Once a gem is level 10, you can no longer reroll it at the NPC. Bracelets will be a 7th accessory slot, which will grant you additional primary stats as well as unique combat bonuses with effects comparable to an additional small set bonus. They will however not be available in the Western launch, as they can only be obtained from content which starts at about 1k 5 item level. We have talked so far so much about gear materials and gear upgrades, but have yet to actually cover what it actually is and how it works. In Lost Ark, all weapons and armors can be honed, which means that you can increase their item level by first leveling them through certain shards. Then, you can use a combination of 3 materials with an additional 2 alongside silver and gold once you get to a higher upgrade level. Gear materials are categorized by tier and have the same equivalent for higher tiers. This means that you will not be able to upgrade tier 1 equipment with tier 1 materials. This also makes all tier 3 materials very valuable, as they'll be eventually widely used for a very long time in your endgame adventures. So let's have a look at them. Guardian stones will be used to upgrade armor pieces. Destruction stones will be used to upgrade weapons. Harmony shards will be used to grant XP to your item. Leap stones will be required to upgrade all equipment in small quantities. Star breaths will increase your Artisan Energy success rate, which we'll cover in just a second. And lastly, fusion stones will be an additional tier 3 only required reagent. In order to upgrade a piece of armor or weapon, as accessories cannot be honed, you'll need to first drop a base armor from any source you want. In this example, we'll use your first entry level Chaos Dungeon, which will have a loot table of 302 item level on all pieces. In order for your character to reach 340 item level, you'll need to upgrade your weapon and all of your armor to 340, as accessories do not count towards your character's item level, and here's how you do it. First, you'll need to visit any item upgrading NPC. They are present in all major cities in the game and have a hammer symbol on the minimap. Then, you'll need to pick the item you want to upgrade. Now, you'll have to fill the item's XP bar using Harmony Shards, which also has a silver fee attached to it, in a similar way to how Awakening cards work. With enough shards, the bar will be full. At that point, you will need the rest of the required materials mentioned earlier, knowing that there are 2 different stone types for weapons and armors. Once you're all ready to go, hone the item, which should have a 100% success rate. By doing so, your item will now be on its first upgrade level, which is +1, increasing his item level and base stats along the way. Now you'll have to repeat this process with all of your gear pieces, with higher level upgrades requiring increasingly more materials. This should cover the basics of gear honing, as long as your success rate will stay at 100%, which is something all items will have up until the +6 upgrade level. Once you'll start working on +7 and up to technically +15, as it is more or less a soft cap for most items before tier 3, a new system will come into play known as the Artisan Energy. I recommend starting with weapon upgrades first, as it usually has the biggest impact factor on your character. The Artisan Energy is a fail-safe bad luck protection system the game has in place, which is going to help you upgrade your gear if you're very unlucky once it reaches higher upgrade levels. Starting at +7 upgrade level and onwards, your chance of succeeding an upgrade will decrease. However, there are 2 ways for you to increase it. The first one is through the Star's Breath materials, which are epic quality gear materials you will obtain while adventuring in Arkesia. As you can see on screen, my basic chance at upgrading this plus 12 chest piece into a plus 13 is 60%. There is however a possibility to increase it to 90% with the use of additional materials, and in this case, those are Star's Breath. Each star used is worth 1.5%, meaning that I could use a maximum of 20 of them to increase my chance up to 90%. The second method will be known as Artisan Energy, which will come into play only once you failed an attempt. Each time you fail to upgrade an item, you will be accumulating an increasingly bigger amount of Artisan's Energy. In the case of this example, my current Artisan Energy is at 0%, and if this honing attempt fails, I will be granted 27.90% Artisan Energy. Since this is a bad luck protection system, Artisan's Energy has no influence on your overall upgrade success rate prior to reaching 100%. It is designed to help you upgrade an item if you failed many times over. Using additional materials like the previously mentioned stars will increase your amount of energy gained for failed attempts. Keep in mind that the energy percent is tied to each item individually, and it is not something that will affect all other or different items you choose to upgrade, knowing that once it reaches 100%, it will guarantee your next upgrade. But if you do manage to upgrade before it reaches 100%, it will reset back to 0. Set items in Lost Ark are, well, a better version of normal items, as they provide you with an additional set bonus. However, instead of being looted, they will need to be crafted. Whenever you venture into Abyssal Dungeons, you'll be able to loot special set fragments or reagents such as Knight's Oaths or Elemental Furies in the case of Tier 1 Abyssal Dungeons. Once you manage to gather enough of those, you should head back into any major city and seek out an Abyssal Gear Crafter NPC, which you can locate by his sword icon on your map. There are, however, multiple sets available within a single item level tier, which vary in their set bonuses. While most DPS players tend to pick one and equip all pieces in order to get the benefit of the entire set bonus, support players more often than not go for a mixed 2-2-2 set, as this actually works. The reasoning behind this is that they're usually not interested in damage bonuses from the 4 or 6 set, while this 3x2 approach gives them usually more stat buffs to things like movement and attack speed. As you may or may not have noticed in the set crafting UI, those base item levels were actually pretty low, so you're probably thinking to yourself, why would you want to craft and invest into them? Am I not wasting resources? Fear not, as thanks to a feature known as gear transfer or gear recycling, you can transfer gear enhancements from one item to another with a 100% success rate, which will essentially always convert your material investment from one item piece to another. This means that assuming you have, for example, an 875 item level plus 7 epic tier 2 weapon, but manage to get a hold of a legendary weapon, but plus 0 with 800 item level, you can recycle your epic weapon into this new legendary weapon, which will transfer all of your upgrades onto it, essentially making a better item for you to wear. An important thing to note, however, is that this gear transfer system only transfers the gear upgrade level and nothing else. This means that sometimes it might not be worth recycling old items right away into new ones if that new item's quality is pretty low or has tripods that you do not want to use in case of weapons. However, there are ways to counteract those as well, which we'll cover in the next section of the video. The general gear progress idea remains the same. You'll eventually want to recycle your old upgraded items into better base ones from higher end content, because if you don't, these old items will reach at some point an item level and upgrade cap, being usually plus 15, so in order to keep progressing further, you'll have to move over to a higher tier base item piece. By doing so, higher tier gear will have its upgrade level lowered, but the item level will remain the same. In this video example, we can see that we've recycled a level 15 legendary set piece weapon onto a relic one, which removed in the process both the set effect and the tripods. However, the item level remained the same and the new weapon became only a plus 6 weapon, which will in turn allow you to upgrade that newly acquired weapon into plus 15 once again. Now that you have a basic understanding of how upgrading gear and item level works in Lost Ark, here's how you should proceed further into tiers. Once you reach this aforementioned upgrade cap on your gear, and in the case of tier 1 this will be 600 item level at gear upgrade plus 15, you'll be able to start doing tier 2 content. Your very first tier 2 chaos dungeon will start dropping 802 base item level rare pieces, which should have you transfer your old plus 15 gear onto them. Whether it was normal blues, epics or legendary abyssal set pieces, if you manage to have those, you will still need to do it in order to progress your item level further, in this case losing the legendary rarity and set bonuses in the process. However, by doing so, your old tier 1 plus 15 will now become a tier 2 plus 1 item with 820 item level. This means that you will now once again be able to hone it up until the new tier 2 cap, which will be 1k1 item level. Keep in mind that you will now need tier 2 gear material upgrades as your tier 1 ones simply won't work, and so the cycle begins anew, from tier 2 blues to epics and other legendary tier 2 abyssal sets up until you reach the start of tier 3, where the real gear hunt begins. Over the course of your gearing adventures, but mainly starting with tier 3, you'll encounter tripod levels on both weapons and armors, which will increase the level and only the level of the skill tripods if equipped, as they cannot grant you additional ones. Since this is where the real gear hunt will begin, your goal is going to be, aside from getting good engravings on your accessories, getting good tripods on your gear pieces. And in order to make this process easier and more manageable, you should visit the tripod NPC in any major city, as he will grant you access to two things. The first one is going to be tripod transfer. This feature will attempt to replace a tripod from your desired piece into one that you'd prefer from another piece of gear. This will destroy the second item in the process, as well as cost you a few silver coins, regardless whether or not the transfer was successful. This is because the transfer feature does not have a 100% success rate, as the chance to succeed in tripod transfer depends on the level of the tripod trait you're trying to transfer, which can be as low as 5% for a +4 tripod. This rate, however, can be increased with certain rare materials, but it is rarely worth it as they are pretty hard and expensive to get. Cycling item drops through the system will allow you to eventually create the perfect combination for your build of choice, but since you'll most likely need quite a few armors or weapon pieces to sacrifice that have that tripod you're looking for, you should definitely use the tripod notification system. By going into your skill book and onto the notification tab, you'll be able to select your favorite tripods. By doing so, all gear that you will ever see drop will now come with an easily distinguishable tripod icon that will help you identify valuable gear pieces for a character at a quick glance. Now that you have presumably made a pretty great piece of armor with all the tripods you wanted thanks to the tripod transfer feature, you should still remember that recycling an item into a higher tier item will make you lose those tripods in the process. Fear not, however, as you can indeed save your hard-earned progress with the use of the tripod library. The second tripod feature, which will be offered to you at the tripod NPC, is the skill tree inventory, which is pretty wonderful. Here you can simply click save to transfer your hard-earned tripod combination of an armor or weapon slot into your tripod library. From now on, your library will have that preset saved and you will be able to apply this exact preset to any future item you'll want at no additional cost. That is assuming it is of the same item type as the one you've saved. This means that those helm tripods you have saved will only be able to be applied to other helms. You even have access to an additional tripod library page, however obtaining more than 2 will cost you gold to unlock. While it is indeed possible to get tripods on items before tier 3, you cannot apply tier 2 presets to tier 3 items, which is why it is not recommended to bother a lot with tripod hunts before tier 3 content. Instead, you should just keep focusing on item level upgrades and engravings. The last category of equipable items we'll cover is going to be the special equipment tab in your character sheet. Here, you'll be able to equip 3 unique items which will start out as rare but can be upgraded up to relic rarity. The compass will be an item which will grant you various sea content buffs such as increased ship sailing speed, island movement speed or repair discount. You'll be able to obtain your base rare compass as an island heart collectible reward and keep upgrading it by gathering even more island hearts. The amulet will be an item which will increase your life skill proficiency through bonuses such as more node rewards or higher base level of all life skills. You'll be able to obtain your base rare amulet as a Ward 3 Leaves collectible reward and keep upgrading it by gathering even more leaves. The PvP badge or crest is going to be an item that increases your world PvP capabilities in content such as GVG or PvP islands. It will grant your character additional buffs whenever you engage in PvP combat with stats such as additional attack speed, cooldown reduction and reduced damage taken amongst other things. You'll be able to buy the base rare version at the PvP vendor NPC once you go above the first 20 PvP beginner ranks. Then you should keep upgrading it by getting a higher general PvP rank. This rank is not to be mistaken with the ranked mode rating. Titles in Lost Ark work in a bit of a creative way, as they allow you to mix and match prefixes and suffixes, essentially allowing you to create your very own title which can be freely changed at all times. Additionally, unlocking various titles from different content will usually add some virtue points to your character passively, meaning that you do not have to wear that title in order to benefit from those bonus points. Over the course of Lost Ark's lifespan, there will more than likely be many timed events such as Christmas or Halloween. Such events usually have login-based rewards and will grant you more often than not a variety of loot crates similar to the ones you can find in the founder packs. In those loot crates, you'll be usually asked to choose an item or items from a wide selection of various goods. My general tip is to not open those crates and just keep them stored in your warehouse, as you never know what kind of in-game goodies you might need at what point. Instead, you should just open up the stuff you need when the time is right so that you always get the best benefit of having those crates available when necessary. There are two main categories of health potions you'll be using, with one being easily obtainable spammable potions, while the other ones should only be used when necessary, as they can become really valuable and expensive in the endgame. So let's dive in. Basic healing potions apply a heal over time effect over a few seconds and only cost small amounts of silver to buy from a vendor. Those should be your day-to-day usage HP potions, as you can and definitely should use them as often as you need. The catch is that those potions are not available in harder instance content such as Abyssal Dungeons and Guardian Raid, making that content harder by design, as well as the main reason why support with healing spells are so valuable in a party. Having said that, it is still possible to use healing potions in dungeons and raids, but only combat healing potions, which you can differentiate as they have a rarity tier attached to them. Those potions restore percentage-based HP instead of being a heal over time. Additionally, they have limited amounts of usages based on the rarity tier you decide to use, knowing that you should avoid using higher tiered combat potions unless necessary, as they will be very valuable in the long run and can become quite expensive. Since you cannot add more than one combat potion to your hotbars, you're only allowed usages of one potion type per encounter based on the rarity you have chosen. This will be 5 for either green or blue potions, 7 for epics, and 9 for, let's call them, mega epics. In Lost Ark, there are many battle items and consumables which can be divided into 3 categories. I will only cover the important ones just so that you do not waste them when not needed or open up ones that are not super great from various item crates. Make sure to hold on to them, as they will become very useful and almost required in endgame harder content. Offensive items will be divided into 2 subcategories, being bombs and grenades. This information is important, as similar to health potions, you cannot use more than one bomb type and one grenade type at a time. The clay and whirlwind grenades are the highest stagger damage grenades in the game. This means that they become extremely useful against any stagger break requirements on various boss encounters and should be on your list of items to keep. The dark grenade reduces the target's defense by 20% for 20 seconds. Usually carried by supports, when used properly can be a superb tool to increase your party's DPS or help with DPS checks. The Destruction and Corrosive Bomb are a bomb duo which will help you inflict weak point or destruction damage to certain bosses and mechanics. The Destruction Bomb does 3 weak point damage on hit, while the Corrosive Bomb acts as a weak points debuff, effectively increasing all weak points bombs and skill damage by +1. The corrosive bombs are usually carried by support players so that they can apply the weak point debuff, often followed by DPS players using buffed up destruction bombs. Frost and sacred bombs are rarely used with the exception of GVG content, as with them you'll be able to AoE stun some enemies or remove CCs from your allies. Moving on, we have utility items, which are situational items with only 3 of them being really useful. The first one is the signal flare, which was mentioned in the Guardian Raid section and will allow you to easily locate the Guardian's current location, as it will appear on your minimap. You can craft those at an alchemist in any major city. The second is the Time Stop Potion, also known as Zonia's Hourglass from League of Legends. Using this item will allow you to go into stasis for a few seconds, which can more often than not save you from many deadly raid mechanics. If you get caught in a very bad position, you should use this as your oh shit button. Lastly, the Panacea will remove all negative status effects you currently have, which can potentially save your life in certain high-end encounters. The final section is for buff items, which are way less common in general but can still be very powerful under the right circumstances, so here's a few that stand out. The Marching Flag will increase your party's movement speed by 20% for 20 seconds. It is useful when dealing with mechanics that require multiple dodges in rapid succession. The Swiftness Robe is a personal stronger Marching Flag, meaning that it will buff your movement speed by 40% for 12 seconds. This is usually used by classes such as the Gun Lancer, as he doesn't have access to a dash. The Awakening Potion will refill your identity power to 100%. This one is mostly used by supports or transform builds like the Shadow Hunter. Since there aren't that many ways of actually generating a lot of silver, the best way to increase silver generation effectively is by doing the same 3 activities on multiple characters. This includes Una Weeklies for the Cube and Chaos Dungeons, as well as the daily quest on Lopang Island. However, those needs to be unlocked first. For the island quest to appear, you must first complete 6 of the same Una task on the island in addition to completing all the other island quests there. with heavy silver generation being somewhat limited. As a matter of fact, this currency acts more often than not as a gating system for heavy spending players, as it is extremely inefficient to use cash shop currency in order to gain any amounts of silver, and it's really recommended to just play the game instead. In order to make gold efficiently, I recommend doing a combination of 4 things. The first most common way to gain gold is by doing reset-based content such as Abyssal Dungeons, Cube Dungeons, Adventure Islands, and many more. Doing this on more characters per day will obviously net you more income. The second is life skill materials, as selling your life skill materials on the auction house will surely be a great source of gold, especially in early launch. For more information about each life skill's value, go back to the life skill section of the video. The third is the combination of Rapport rewards, Una tasks, and the Ignea token bags, as those are all good sources of gold. Make sure to target high gold rewards if that's what you're after. Lastly, and likely the best way when used efficiently, is selling good gear on the auction house, such as high quality accessories with good engravings, engraving books, and ability stones, but we'll get back to this topic in a bit on how to determine an item's value. I am also legally obliged to tell you that the best way to make gold is without a doubt swiping in the cash shop. Then you can exchange your royal crystals into blue gems and then blue gems into gold in the currency exchange tab, which can be found under Mary's secret shop offers. The auction house is, well, a player-driven marketplace which allows you to buy and sell all kinds of goods the game has to offer for gold. There are a few things to know about Lost Ark's auction house system. In order to buy any goods, you'll need a special auction house currency known as fions on top of gold, which is one of the 3 self-regulating systems the Lost Ark economy has to help non-spenders, as this will be adding a minimal value to all auction houses' trade. Keep in mind that the amount of fions required depends on the rarity and tier of the gear being bought. On screen you can see a general breakdown of fion costs per type of gear sold, and as you can see, the price per tier 3 accessories goes up dramatically, as they're usually the most valuable items one can obtain. The second regulatory market system, although not directly related to the auction house itself, is Mary's secret shop. It offers you an alternative to auction house goods and their prices, effectively setting a general average market price for certain types of materials. Since you might be able to get better deals for yourself in Mary's shop than the player-controlled auction house, make sure to always check your deals, as you could technically resell them on the auction house for a profit, but we'll get back to Mary's shop a bit later. The third one is item tradability and reselling. Items have a limited resell, as some items are bound when purchased while others may be traded up to 3 times, so pay close attention. This system blocks the more advanced traders and spenders from controlling prices too much by not allowing them to constantly buy and resell items for a higher price. As mentioned in the gold making section of the video, the best way to make gold is by selling highly valuable items, and here's how to tell which one are those. Accessories tend to be much more expensive than gear simply because the fion cost is so much higher. Adding to that, getting a good engraving and stat plus high quality roll is likely the hardest thing to obtain in the game. The general stats that are worth to look out for whenever you loot any accessories are specialization, crit, and swiftness, with specialization and swiftness combos usually being suited for supports, while crit and specialization is a popular DPS choice. When it comes to engravings, and this includes those found everywhere, meaning accessories, ability stones, and engraving books, here is a general value tier list based on Russian and the Korean market prices. The Grouge engraving is used by virtually all DPS roles, which makes it extremely expensive most of the time, while class engravings are usually quite valuable as well, especially if it's a popular build like the Madness Berserker. This assumes they come with a decent engraving combo and no high amounts of malus engravings. Ability stones pretty much follow the same rules as accessories, which is 2 engravings that make sense together and malus that ideally isn't attack power decrease. Keep in mind that ability stones cannot roll any class engravings. Lastly, we have gems, as since you can use another class's gem by simply re-rolling it at the NPC for silver, or just combining them into a higher level one, which will guarantee a skill of your class. By that logic, the only thing that really matters on a gem is its level. Since we've talked about so many different currencies in this video, here's a brief recap of a vast majority of them. In order for me to not repeat myself too much, keep in mind that most currencies have their equivalent versions across different tiers. Carnelians will be dropped from named monsters around Arkesia and rewarded from general outdoor gameplay. They can be exchanged for Rapport rewards at an NPC. Destruction stones are the weapon-specific honing currency. Guardian stones are the armor-specific honing currency. Harmony shards are the honing experience shards required for, well, honing. Leap stones are a rare honing material currency. Fusion stones are a tier 3 only gear honing currency. Star's breaths improve your honing success rate. Tickets allow you to enter places such as the Cube Dungeons, boss rushes, or platinum fields. Courage points are the PvP points you gain when participating in any PvP activities. They can be exchanged for a wide variety of gear materials at the PvP vendor. Chaos shards are consumed each time you use your awakening skill. You can buy them at any general merchant for 250 silver apiece. Resurrection feathers are a special type of currency which will allow you to resurrect on the spot after being slain if you choose to do so. Keep in mind their usage is limited in high-end content. Creation fragments are card experience items. Consuming them will add XP into your card XP bank required for awakening cards. Ignea tokens are rewarded from Ignea tasks. And they can generally be exchanged for gold at an NPC. Fions are an auction house specific currency which is required on top of gold when buying items. Higher tiered accessories usually require way more Fions per item. Stronghold seal orders are obtained by sending your naval missions in your stronghold. Those can be exchanged at an NPC in your island for various valuable goods. Blue gems is Mary Shop's currency which can be exchanged to gold via the currency exchange tab. Gold is gold and silver is silver. Crazy, I know, right? The most important part about them is that money is shared across all your characters. Rift shards can be obtained by doing chaos gates, which can then be exchanged at an NPC for crates which can contain secret maps. Voyage and pirate coins are currencies mostly obtained from sea content. Most of them are interchangeable at different NPCs, but avoid spending them all at once. You never know when you might need a different one. Silmail bloodstones are the guild currency and are gained from doing guild activities and spent at your own guild shop. A higher level guild will have a better guild shop offer. Perception shards and disorder crystals are the infinite chaos dungeon currency, mostly used on a fresh account to buy your first 20 engraving books. The Power Pass was a system present in the closed beta, which is essentially a character boost to level 50, but most likely for money. It has been confirmed that this will not be coming to the Western release at launch, as we will have the knowledge transfer system instead. It may or may not be added at a later date, but my guess is that it might make an appearance once new classes will be released. It was confirmed by Amazon Games that the Western release will not have language tags for the EU region, making it potentially problematic for a few communities and people that like to communicate and play with folks that speak their own language. As a result, various Discord communities around the world tried to create some unofficial language-based realms, so I'll be showing you the data they have gathered so far. But you should keep in mind that this sample is rather small and might not have any real impact once the game launches, so take it with a grain of salt. I'll leave a link to those documents in the video description. As we've mentioned many times before, a vast majority of Lost Ark's content has a roster or account-wide progress. However, to be more precise, this is actually server-specific and not account-specific. Once you pick a server, you'll most likely want to remain there for good. While the vast majority of Lost Ark's content can still be played across realms and servers, there are a few exceptions that apply. You can see on screen a list of things that are server-specific, as well as what is region-wide. Region-wide means across the entire Europe, or in the case of North America, across either NA East or NA West. For me, the biggest impact factor out of server-specific content is definitely both guild content and the pre-made PvP queue, as you'll definitely want to be on the same server with your friends in order to be able to play with them in this type of content. While to the surprise of many, there won't be a possibility of a weak local auction house market, as the entire auction house is region-wide. With this last-minute update from Amazon Games and Smilegate, which states that the Western release will in fact have modified content up until a small taste of Tier 3, meaning that up until the release of the game, some features might still be unknown as no region ever launched with a patch like ours. This will in fact be probably the biggest MMO launch to date in terms of the amount of content available at release. So don't feel overwhelmed with all the systems there are to understand. After all, this video was meant for you to bookmark it so that you can come back to the parts you may or maybe your friends will need at your own pace. It may surprise you, but this is also why this video was delayed by about 10 days, as I had to redo many parts of it due to this unexpected change. This also means that by the time this gets uploaded, assuming I don't lose my voice before the end, I'll probably go to sleep for 3 days. With the introduction of early Tier 3 available at launch, spending currencies and time on any pre-Tier 3 gear is likely not going to be a good investment, so you should probably avoid spending any valuable currency that won't benefit you in the long run, that is assuming you don't want it to feel wasted. This, however, does not devalue the natural gearing progress in the game, as for example, you'll still need green engraving books first before being able to use blue ones, so just have fun playing the game while you try and arrive into Tier 3 content, which is where you'll want to decide whether or not you want to start your endgame gear progression as your main character, or whether you might want to try out an alt, or even start saving up for a future new main class. It is unknown when our Western client will receive the missing classes that Korea has. However, fear not, as there are many ways for you to prepare to switch over to a new class once it is released. Here's a few of them. With our version of the game receiving the knowledge transfer alt boost system, you should keep at least one high item level boost for your future main so that it will have a massive head start compared to your fresh account at launch, as it can start at up to 1k1 item level alongside having access to many roster-wide unlocks. You should then focus on saving up all tier 3 resources so that you will be able to get them over to your new character, from gear upgrade materials to gold and silver. You can read up all the engraving books you might potentially want ahead of time, so that's probably something you want to do. If you're into PvP, getting a high rank will be of big value to you in the long run, as you'll have a steady income of weekly PvP currency which will be traded for many goods. Lastly, you should focus on roster-wide content such as collectibles, as everything you accomplish will benefit your future main class.
Yeah.
Well, yes, but actually no. Before diving into the subject, it is undeniable that Lost Ark's cash shop offers many pay-for-convenience goodies or some form of speed-ups in the form of additional life skill energy or gear upgrade materials. Having said that, the game does not offer the possibility of buying character power directly, such as items or accessories, and in order to obtain almost any item in the game, you'll have to actually drop it yourself by doing the respective content. Additionally, with the exception of skins, a vast majority of all things offered in the cash shop are priced in blue gems, and blue gems are essentially gold, as it can be freely exchanged on the currency exchange tab, acting as a system similar to the World of Warcraft WoW token. For additional context about the pay-to-win aspects of the game, here's a clip of Kanema, who is a famed free-to-play Lost Ark player.
But 90 to 99% of the people that are paying, they basically convert their money into gold, which is basically the god-like currency in this game. With this, you can buy anything that you want, right? Whether it's gonna be outfit, whether it's gonna be cash outfit, it's gonna be like some random item or anything, it will be buyable with gold, right? So everything get converted into this. So the pay-to-win aspect is that you convert it into that currency, and you buy materials to basically further enhance your gear. These materials right here, right? That is the pay-to-win aspect of the game. Now the thing is, right, who do you think is selling these materials? Me, the free-to-play player. So basically, the pay-to-win aspect of this game is that the people that are paying the free-to-play players. So basically, it's healthy for the game because it makes free-to-play players like me can catch up into the paying player.
Mari's Secret Shop is in fact an anti-whale or heavy spender system which is designed to regulate auction house prices just so that heavy spenders do not buy entire realms without the possibility for regular or free-to-play players to obtain anything. By having access to your personal store which offers you various deals in blue gems, you can and should get those good deals offered to you by spending your gold on them, as especially in early release, there's a big chance that the items you bought from the shop can be resold on the auction house for a massive profit. While its UI feels indeed a bit in your face, which is I guess an Asian design thing, don't be scared to buy those good deals if you feel like it's worth the current gold exchange price. A lot of Korean players call Lost Ark a pay-to-lose game, so let me explain why. Keep in mind that this will be based on endgame content that will not be available in the Western launch. Let me preface by saying this: the endgame tier 3 content in Korea is extremely challenging and no amounts of boost or money can make it a breeze, effectively making it so that even the biggest of wallet warriors cannot overcome the endgame challenges. Additionally, let's assume that while free-to-play players can upgrade their endgame relic gear to a plus 20 level, heavy spenders can push it a few levels higher. However, the very hardest challenge in the game is actually normalized, which means that your additional upgraded item levels in this case are rendered useless. Completion of this challenge has a small chance to reward you with S-tier quality gear, a gear of extreme quality but at the same time stupidly expensive to upgrade, and is designed for those that have mastered the game to have a long-term reward for having basically beaten the game. Since upgrading this gear is extremely grindy, the ceiling for spending money is just as high, which is a design allowing those that are willing to spend vast amount of disposable income to do so at will, essentially sponsoring the game for the rest of us so that quality content can remain free, it can be developed at a rapid pace. Long story short, Lost Ark is dubbed pay to lose by the Korean community because in the end, no amount of money will make you able to complete the endgame content and get its best rewards, as the only thing it will help you accomplish is reaching that late endgame skill and mechanical barrier faster, thanks to a faster progression rate due to spending money. The Crystalline Aura is a system akin to a small sub-fee for being a free-to-play game, which offers you a variety of minor convenience bonuses, such as free-of-charge Triports usages and additional Bifrost slots. It does cost blue gems and lasts for 30 days, which means that it can be either bought with real money or gold through the currency exchange tab. To celebrate the upcoming launch of Lost Ark, Amazon Prime Gaming will offer exclusive in-game content to Prime members, which will include consumables, a free Crystalline Aura, as well as some blue gems, which is essentially about $25 of in-game currency. While this has been confirmed to be available for the month of February, it is unclear if it will remain a monthly recurring Prime bonus. If you are, however, an owner of Amazon Prime, there's this thing I heard called the free Twitch Prime subscription, and I've been told that if you do not know what to do with it, this hedgehog of mine over at twitch.tv/Vintusius could probably make something out of it. I mean, come on, just look at all those cute emotes you're missing out on. In my opinion, Lost Ark is actually quite casual friendly. Even though the amount of content can seem daunting at first, the reality is that you are free to play the game however you want and whenever you want at your own pace. Every single day you play will have you progress your account and character in some form or another, while at the same time not invalidating anything you have already accomplished before, as you need to usually go from content A to content B if you want to see content C. On top of that, there are many rest systems which we've covered before, so just do things at your own pace and enjoy the game's content, which should most likely last you for months to come. The only thing you should be potentially worried about is whether or not you'll actually stay casual in the end. With our game version being something akin to a Frankenstein build, we will not have access to any of the previously available Tier 1 and Tier 2 raids in Korea such as Kaiser, as they have since been removed, which is a bit of a shame. Smilegate did say that they might bring them back with a fresh coat of paint, so we'll have to wait and see, knowing that the first real 8-player raid we'll most likely receive will be the Abyssal raid Argos. The Abyssal raid Argos, followed by Legion raids, are going to be 8-man raids that Lost Ark will offer to players of the Western release in what is most likely going to be in the coming months. This is what most MMORPG players would consider a real raid equal to a WoW Mythic final encounter, and arguably Lost Ark's best content to date. Those consist of long fights, multiple mechanics and a variety of deadly party wipes combos, on top of the inability to use Resurrection Feathers. Since this won't be relevant for a while, I will not be covering this topic aside from teasing you of what is to come. If you'd like me to cover this topic in a future video, feel free to subscribe to the channel. While not present at launch in the Western release in the case of Legion raids, Lost Ark can and will offer harder versions of existing content in which usually gear is normalized. This means that while all of your character customization is still present, it will be capped up until a certain value, effectively making it impossible to trivialize it through overgearing. Not only is it designed with harder mechanics, but at the same time your gear is most likely a bit worse than it would have normally been. The best example I could give you is that at the moment Korea's hardest available content, offering the best rewards in the game, which is the last Legion raid and Hell mode, is normalized this way, making virtually all pay-to-win arguments worthless, as no amounts of money would bring you even remotely close to defeating this encounter, as less than 5% of the player base has currently cleared it. I even went as far as asking Korean players this question. If you wanted to know how exactly endgame Legion raids PvE looks like in Tier 3 in Korea and what awaits us in the near future, you should definitely check out this masterpiece of a video made by Tome called How Hard is Raiding in Lost Ark, as it's honestly the only video that you will ever need to see to answer your question. During their Lost Ark online winter event in December, Smilegate showed a big preview of all upcoming content that will come to the Korean server over the course of 2022. We can only hope that our Western client will be catching up to them sooner than later. In their 8-hour presentation, information was honestly packed, so I'll just recap some heavy hitters. This year they'll see the introduction of 2 new classes as well as the female Berserker, the addition of Mega Awakening skills to all 22 classes already available in Korea, 2 new raids, 2 new continents and story content, new game modes such as Realm vs Realm Mass Scale PvP, a Battle Royale, a Mario lookalike mode, and Stronghold customization improvements which will be able to compete with The Sims. The best part is that we're only a month into 2022 and Smilegate already released a few of those features on the Korean server, so needless to say, the future of the game is looking bright. After all, just like with everything, Lost Ark might not be a game for everyone. Some will surely get put off by the payment elements being present, but the best thing about it is that it's free to try out if you're wondering if this is actually worth a shot. All I can say is that making this video took me about 4 months, and regardless of the thousands of hours put into it, I'm still excited to play and release alongside many of my friends, as we'll be able to run a small organized guild of friends, which is something we've been longing for ever since the death of 10-man raiding in World of Warcraft. The more I learned about the game, the more I felt like it looks like a lot of fun, especially if you're into PvP as I am. So the best I can say is that I hope this video was helpful to you, and I hope you have a great time in the game if you decide to stay for a little longer in Arkesia than just a... Before we end this whale of a video and you click me off, assuming you've actually enjoyed it, I'll be thankful if you could click that like button and maybe share this video with friends. If you decide to subscribe, I'll make sure to provide quality Lost Ark content in the future. Now there's a few things I'd like to say and many credits that need to be given. And just so that I don't repeat myself, everything and every mention I'm about to say will be linked in the video description. Firstly, I would like to thank Sancton, as the vast majority of the knowledge I've gathered was thanks to his stream and his written guide. If you want to see for yourself what more awaits us in future updates, make sure to check out his guide as he covers future tier 3 information. I would like to thank the PvP squad Lino, Laufey and Wilkie for both their knowledge and snippets of footage that were used. The Paladin Flames for More Flames for teaching me how to not suck as a Paladin, Canon and Typhoon for their interviews which helped me develop an in-depth look at the Korean metas and playstyles, Saivo for being the Lost Ark ambassador he has been for many years already, the website creators of Papunica and Maxroll, alongside the Saint Guild, Teapotty Percy and Sean Damon for their resources, the friendly neighborhood streamers Kanima and Meepete for always replying to my questions and checking information that I requested, Steparo and Enzi for endless amounts of materials, and lastly, Stoops and Asmongold for my own WoW community, as without their exposure to the game many months ago, I probably wouldn't have dived into Lost Ark before the actual release of the game. After having studied the game for 6 months, I feel like I can have now a PhD from it, so if you ever have a question about the game that somehow hasn't been answered in this video, I'll make sure to reply to all of them so that it could potentially turn into a follow-up FAQ video if necessary. I now thank you for your attention, and I hope to see you maybe on my Twitch, Discord, or in Arkesia. Goodbye.